Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today with episode 244 of the H.A.M Radio Podcast.
And it's me, Karak with ACG.
Karak, I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're doing well, my friend.
We haven't talked inside.
In about a week and a half now because we had Brian T. Delaney on last week. You were reviewing Doom Eternal at the time, something we're going to get into a little bit later in the show. But we hope all of you out there, we don't want to like bang you over the head with the same stuff you've been hearing about probably, all over the world. It's pretty hard to escape, if I'm quite honest. But we just hope you're all doing well, taking good care of yourself, and most importantly, staying inside. Now for our typical rigmarole. If you guys are new here, this is a weekly podcast ran by myself and Karak of ACG. We do have a Patreon set up if you want to get early access for this show. It's just $1. We had 4 new patrons come in after the Brian T. Delaney episode, which was awesome. Yes, all of them at the early access level, which we love to see. I always try to encourage you guys. We do have higher levels set up on the Patreon. Same thing with Karak, but it's more, I think, worth your dollar, as well as saving money if you support at a lower level, because we like consistency. We don't want to see you sling us like $100 one time and then peace out. We'd rather have you for 100 months at $1. We want that interaction with you and to have you around. But we appreciate you nonetheless, and thank you for choosing to support us. I am not the only one with a Patreon though. Karak has one. Karak, do you have anything going on with yours?
Yeah. Strangely enough, for reasons I have no clue why, I'm not allowed to talk about a game that's coming up very soon that most people probably already know about that I'll be reviewing. It's really weird. Okay. But I'm not even, it's an odd embargo, but I'll be reviewing something that'll go live for starting of next week. And then we've switched over to just be doing a shit ton of random videos as well as streaming during this time. We were already headed towards that. But so one of my patrons is now streaming on my channel as well as me. So in the early morning when I'm asleep, he's in Europe. So he's doing he's been on the podcast tons of times with me, but he's doing like fighting games and shit stuff that I'm just not super interested in. Yeah. It takes a little bit of the brunt off so that I can be like, you get some people to feel like Twitch really pays off other than just the podcast, which is nice.
Yeah, that's smart, because that's it sounds like what I was doing with Colin at Colin's Last Stand. I make videos on his channel, and sometimes people are like, well, where's Colin? And I'm like, part of this is the idea that he can't be making content constantly. Like, he doesn't have the time, and that's why he hires me to step in and make videos for him to keep the YouTube channel thriving, alive, interactive. But it's not going to be him a lot of the times. So yeah, that's awesome that you're doing that. I think it's a smart tactic. It also kind of helps get exposure to smaller creators in a manner of speaking. Every intro, we also like to talk about what we're playing. I was just telling Karak before this, my life has just been working out and playing games. It's just been that. So I've had a lot of time to play a lot of different things. It's been really nice. It kind of reminds me of high school when I just would come home and I'd have friggin' 5 hours a day just to play whatever I want, and you really just plowed through some stuff. And it's been like that all over again. So I'm just trying to take some positives away from the situation. But we'll start off with you, Karak. What have you been playing, my friend?
So we've been doing a shit ton of Skylanders. My wife loves Skylanders, and I'm a fan of Sims and Skylanders and Infinity and all that stuff. And so it just popped up. It's nice and shiny, It's like sort of a cool getaway from the depressive shit that's going on. So we've been playing a fuck ton of that, and I like it because you have like the physical character, because I don't collect special edition stuff at all, the toys, but these are both. It's like it's like an amiibo. So in that way, it's very cool. And let's see, some State of Decay 2. I tested out the Juggernaut edition you did the video for.
Did you like that?
The Juggernaut edition?
Yeah. What'd you think of it?
Yeah, it ran really...
I know we both liked the original release. It had some flaws, but what'd you think of the new re-release, if you will?
Yeah, I think it did well. Other people had tech issues that I didn't have with the person I was playing the game with. We had no tech issues, in fact. I will say I wasn't in love with the new location, the something Ridge or whatever, and the reason why is because it felt like nothing was there. It was so, it's like it starts you, we decided let's start a new game to co-op. We jumped in, and the new land was just, it was sort of barren. Like it was, you're sort of up in the middle of nowhere, and it felt odd compared to the way the game felt originally. It took us a long time to even get a one single firearm. like a long time, hours.
Yeah.
So that was the only weird thing that occurred.
It kind of reminded me of Days Gone in a way. It really did, because I started off in the section. I don't know if you can choose. I think you can, where like there's like 5 starting areas on this map, and I started off on what I think would be the top left corner. We were near like what was a it was like a tower you could climb up, and it would serve as like a way to identify nearby locations. That was built into the base itself. That was kind of that base's specific advantage before you could advance to other ones. But yeah, we were like tucked up in the neck of the woods. And I thought what was interesting about it was that instead of having tons of streets littered with cars and gas stations and sort of the stuff that you'd expect to see in a State of Decay map, I sort of enjoyed the wilderness and just being out in kind of the middle of nowhere. I felt like it was a nice change, but I get what you mean. It was different, where I could understand why folks wouldn't be a huge fan of it.
Yeah, and we didn't start in the wilderness. Where we started was sort of pseudo city, like a little or a like a suburb, and that was what was weird. So there were no vehicles to drive, but there were shit ton damaged, right? They're not real. You can never repair them. And there was like some car stations to gas up cars and all that stuff. Which I think sometimes there's just that game where the map has that slow part, and we just happen to get that slow part. It doesn't matter though, because I like State of Decay 2. So to me, it was just like, okay, that was slow, but it didn't make me magically dislike the game, because I like the game.
It's funny you say that, because it's just something with games that give you a ton of agency right off the bat. Like I was playing the Trials of Mana demo on my Switch last night. I was really curious about this game because it looked like a Tales of game, but it looked like it had the choice and consequence of a Western RPG, and I really liked that idea, that mixture. And it's a lot like Dragon Age Origins, where when you start off, you pick a character and you play their origin story. And we've seen this in JRPGs in the past. Like a recent one would be Octopath Traveler. You go through everyone's Chapter 1 story before you round up the group. But it changes how, when you start in with, we'll say I started with Reitz. She's this captain of the guard with a spear, and her castle gets taken over, and she has to flee. And she ends up going to this town, I think Lavarl was what it was called. And she was only going there because one of the companions I selected was a character located there. So the game sort of directs you in a certain path. But I personally didn't like the start because I found the story not that interesting. I didn't find the voice acting, I don't want to be really hyperbolic here, but I genuinely mean it, when it might have been some of the worst I've ever heard. It was I almost recommend playing the demo. It's free, just to see what I'm talking about. Because then I had my friend play it, and he ended up enjoying it, but he had a completely different start. So it's just interesting you mentioned how there could be slow parts in the map, or in my case, you pick one origin character, but it's not as good as the other. Some parts of the story may feel rushed, where other ones clearly took their time more. That's kind of what happens when right off the bat there's not that sense of stability, I guess, of just like, okay, each player is going to experience this part, and then here's a branch.
Yep.
So it's funny you bring that up. What did you think of how they priced it? I was really intrigued at the fact that this was a free update if you already own the game, and it gave you all the DLC, which was like an entire campaign in the old map, and the whole co-op horde mode, and then this new map. I was really shocked at the value they provided in this update.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, so this is way before your time, but it reminds me of, so Virtua Fighter 2, this is years ago, came out on the Sega Saturn, and when the PS2 was out, and it wasn't very good technically. And so what happened was Sega took it and remixed it and remastered it with high definition textures and gave it away free to everybody who owned Virtua Fighter 2. And to me, that's what this feels like, is that I liked State of Decay when it first came out, but I'm not going to lie and say that, like, I know people who had technical issues. I didn't have a ton, but it didn't run 100%. The best, and there were technical issues, and I personally feel that they probably were not happy themselves. As a company, they were not exactly in love with how it released. So to me, it almost feels like they were like, well, let's just reward the people who got it. And we also now have a better game. So to me, it was like the perfect storm. Like, it is a fun game. I already liked it, but now it does run better. I certainly noticed that when I was playing it.
Looks better too.
It looks better. Yeah, it's smoother overall. So to me, this is probably what they wanted. Like, it feels like that's what they find. They're like, okay, this is how we would have liked to have released it day one.
Yeah, I've been telling people it's been like a sneaky good month for Microsoft between Ori, this update. They got the beta out now for Phantasy Star Online 2, which is pretty monumental that's in the West. You've got Bleeding Edge coming up next week. I think that's what it's called, right? Bleeding Edge.
Yes, Bleeding Edge, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and that's coming out next week, and I'm very interested in that game because I love hero-based multiplayer games, like ever since Overwatch and Smite as well. I just love those style of games, and so for me, Bleeding Edge is super on my radar, and I mean, they're doing this all in the span of a month, and I don't feel like everyone's talking about it as a whole like they would with Sony, where when they do like back-to-back exclusives, it's like, man, Sony's killing it, and I'm like, yeah. Microsoft's providing a lot of value here and bolstering things with some pretty substantial exclusives. So
yeah, Ori's a huge exclusive, and for whatever reason, people like, dude. I mean, that in particular puzzles me. That I think if that was a Sony, just the name Sony was on it, or it was a PS4 thing, people'd be like, "This is the greatest thing of all fucking time." But
yeah,
there's just something weird about it.
I mean, as reviewers, I think we kind of see it in a reflection of our own viewership. There's just a general interest more in Sony exclusives than Xbox exclusives. Like, when I look at my viewership, my PlayStation exclusive reviews, Days Gone, Spider-Man, Bloodborne, like, they just blow out my Xbox exclusive reviews. They completely. It's not even close. So I think it's just a general interest. I don't know if it means there's bias built into that because there's sort of a label, right? Sony, good exclusives. Microsoft, no exclusives, even though they've really bolstered that front. But yeah, it's just a shame because I feel like Ori sort of came and went in the discussion. I was like, this game is beautiful when I was playing it. I was thinking I was going to see screenshots up the wazoo on my feeds, and I only saw it for like a day or two, and then quickly people just moved on, which is a shame because if you haven't played it, I don't know what you reviewed it as, but I gave it a buy. I was like, this game's excellent.
Oh, yeah, the game is excellent. Yeah, there were some technical issues. They patched it prior to it releasing. Luckily, I happened to see a post. I was not happy at their communication with reviewers because I didn't get communication that there was a patch until way after I had already been informed by somebody on a random forum. So I did get to play the patched version, and I was really happy with it. It had some issues. I know that some people, though, technically have had more issues than I did on that one in particular. I saw some video of some freezes or pauses. But overall, dude, the game is just it's awesome. Yeah, I loved it.
Exactly.
Music
and the thing that
insane.
Oh man, yeah, dude. That's the thing I tried to explain in my review. It was a really weird review for me to make because I was one of the people who had really bad pausing and freezes, but you actually gave me the tip. You're like, try resetting the app.
Oh, right. I forgot this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, okay, I'll give it a shot. Because at that time I was going to bed when you told me. So when I started it back up, it was just kind of natural. And all the problems were gone. And so it was just like 6 hours of this is what this whole game is. And between the art, the animation, the color, the gameplay felt just so tight, and then the story moved me way more than the original. I thought the original had a good story, but it didn't touch as deeply as I thought it would. This one really just, wow. It was a excellent game. I could not recommend it enough, and Game Pass users are in for a treat, because it's not like a super long game. It took me about, I want to say 10 hours, 9 hours. Like, it was pretty short, but there was still, I had like 25% of the map left to do things in. Yeah. But yeah, man, great game. Have you been playing anything else on top of this? Like, have you been playing a lot of Neo 2 lately?
No, I did a review in progress for Neo 2. Really did enjoy it, but then Ori came and I had to review that. And so I just didn't get back to Neo. I did like what I played of Neo, though. There were some issues for sure, but I still sort of dig that game. I will say this: I don't know what you've thought about it. I did find it more difficult than the first one.
Yeah.
For reasons I tried to explain. I don't know if I perfectly explained it in my video, but I definitely found it more challenging. But I enjoyed what I played. I wouldn't say it's a masterpiece or anything.
I put I'm 43 hours in right now.
Yeah, I have about 20, so you're about double my hours.
Yeah, and I thoroughly love this game. I think it is just not only really fun, but the challenge is consistent. I love the map design. Like, I like that the game has just a ton of maps. I sort of describe it as a multiplayer experience where some folks have been like, oh, some of these maps are from the first Neo, but not only is it the same setting, but they're crafted in a different manner, and there should be some sense of carryover to maintain the setting, I believe, in the time period. But also because it just doubles the amount of content that's there. And kind of like what we were saying with State of Decay, a lot of what I've played with Neo 2 so far, and I'm not at the end yet, but it feels like this is the game they wanted to make originally, like create your own character, a ton of options on how you want to build. It's just really empowering if you like to role play in the sense of, do I want to be a ninja who does a ton of damage over time, or a battle mage who has heavy armor, or do I want to be a light armor mage who sort of sits in the back line and does debuffs? I mean, there's a lot of options of approach, and that's what I've really appreciated about it. I will say one thing, and you won't really know this until you get a little bit further past the part you're at, but the story ramps up, and it's actually pretty good. It's not like anything I'll remember forever or be able to quote, but it's actually really a entertaining and interesting story, because for those who don't know, it's a fantasy approach to Nobunaga's takeover of Japan, and it sort of carries beyond that a little bit more. And I just found that part really neat on how they executed it and set up some of the backstory for the first Neo. I think that's part of the reason why they went with a prequel approach in the terms of story here, is because I think mentally they were like, this is the Neo we wanted to make, even though we're going to call it Neo 2. It's just easily, and I know there hasn't been a ton of games. There has been now, but easily my favorite game of the year so far. Oh. Really, really, really like it. It's like you said, not without flaws. Like, what did you not specifically enjoy about it?
I would say the only thing that I talked to Fighting Cowboy about this, and you during the podcast 2 podcasts ago, mm-hmm. I think, that I still felt, to me, I felt at least that the parry was a little bit overused, a little like Doom's glory kill, in that it's just a little bit overused. It just feels like at times I'm all, okay, I can fight this the way I want, but if I want to take out this boss really fast, I have to use the parry because of this. And it happened on a couple bosses. Also, I would say I don't mind any reused. I get why people have an issue with reused maps.
Yeah, same.
Right? So I get that. I will say I fucking really do not like the entire mechanic, nor the way it's even set up for the Dark Realm. I think it...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it was dumb. I think it didn't work, and I think that it was a cheat for difficulty. That I would have had. I would have rather had real difficulty than, hey, we're gonna magically make your key. I can't remember. Your key goes down, but your anima goes up, or something like that. I think that's what it was.
It's just like your recovery speed. Yeah. Your stamina overall is just incredibly slow.
Yeah, and so I did Cheese Whiz, one of the guys, by bringing him out. There was a circle of the Dark Realm, and he was in it, and so I killed all of his ads, and then got him to come all the way out of a temple into the normal part of the world, right? And was able to defeat him quite easily. But some enemies you couldn't do that. But it just didn't work for me. To me, that just felt like not fun. But everything else was good. And I'm a Kirasagama fan, so any game that allows me to run around with that weapon is already sort of high for me, and it looks good. Like, I always was like, man, I look fucking good. Yeah. Like when I was using it, I was like, I look awesome using this thing. So that that spoke to me. I love the animation.
About the Dark Realm for sure, because for me, I liked it since the game is very. Because folks have always asked me, like, hey, if I like Bloodborne, if I like Dark Souls, should I pick this up? And I'm like, well, if you like the difficulty of those games, sure, you can say yes. But I said, DNA-wise, this game is totally different. It's very loot-driven, set building, kind of like Diablo. It's very action heavy. You know, you can kind of like button mash some combos out. It's like quick attack, heavy attack. You have access to a lot more abilities and powers. Some of them way more powerful than others. So it's really hard to tell folks like, hey, you should try this game if you like Dark Souls or Bloodborne. But when it comes to the Dark Realm, the reason I liked it was because with that fast action pace that I was just talking about, I like how when you get in there, you have to slow down. You know, you have to like, okay, I got to actually, this enemy that I'd normally shred through, I have to now pick apart delicately, and even more so because in the Dark Realm, some of them are very powerful. I don't like how they just increase their health pool a little bit. Yeah. I find that lazy and, like you said, kind of a cheap difficulty. One thing my friends have been complaining about that I think is totally valid is the grapples. There's a lot of grapples in this game, grab attacks that enemies pull on you.
Oh, shit. Yes, they're right. That is true. That is true.
Yeah, and there are some that I think most are telegraphed very well, where you know they're coming, and like you have a huge black and white aura around them, and you just know, and it's like, if I don't dodge roll, then I'll get caught, and you sort of get punished, which is how the game works and how it should work if you fuck up. But there was one grab in particular where an enemy sort of, I knocked out their key, and I thought I had them stunned, and they sort of did like a power aura explosion to restore their key, and out of that, while I was knocked back, they instantly grabbed me. And those were the moments where I was like, okay, that's not something that should happen, where that's not even a pattern or a read or a telegraph. That's like, he just grabbed me.
He just grabbed you. Yeah. I will say this though, dude, without a shadow of a doubt, and I said this in the little review thing I did, was that even though those bothered me, because I did bring those up, it was not as bad as the first giant in Sekiro, which was grabbing me from 800 yards away. Like, legit broken, right? Busted. So I didn't feel like these were legit broken, but I do feel that, like you said, so these guys have stated, and I did look this up, they stated they wanted the bosses in Neo 2 to feel far more like fighting game enemies. So they were going to have more moves than Neo 1. So a boss was going to feel like 30. So I counted the first boss, the horse guy. I counted the horse guy's moves. He had 38 moves. So first of all, that's more than any boss in any game ever, as in any of these style games. More than Surge, I went and looked. It's more than Surge, it's more than anything. He had and those are definitive moves, not even anything else. Also, what I loved is if I switched weapons, not only would he use different moves, but sometimes from different ranges than if I had a different weapon. So if I had a Kurosagama and it wasn't working, and switched to, I was using the large samurai sword, the Odachi is what it's called in that one, and he would use them at different times. So I agree with all of what you're saying. I think the only thing I didn't like is that I was using the Kurosagama, which, so what you were saying about the slowdown, it is true, but even in the stance that does the most damage, the Kurosagama doesn't do a lot of damage. So I was probably against some enemies, making it difficult just by sheer weapon choice.
I kind of noticed
play against those guys.
That some enemies, even distance-wise, they had move sets where if I'm playing back, like, and I mean really far back, trying to just almost catch my breath essentially, and be like, okay, pause, hold up, and they have a whole move set for at range. That's where I was like, wow, I fucking love this game, because I like the feeling of being on my toes, right? It was like, okay, if I get too far, now I need to know he's going to throw 40 darts at me, but if I get too close, he's going to do an explosion. So I need to stay mid-range and just, kind of poke away at him. One thing that I've had an issue with balance-wise is the yokai abilities are fucking awesome. I love how many there are too. Like when I unlocked it, it was one of those things where I was like, oh, there's gonna be like 3 of these, and I'm just gonna pick the best one, and I have like 20, 30 just to pick from. The issue with that count is that some are clearly more obviously going to be better than others. Like the snake one, I think Yatsu no Kami, I think it's what it's called. That one's just incredibly good. Like I think I was level 60 at the time, and I was still using a level 20 yokai ability because it was just that effective. It would just dash through your enemy, go back and forth like 3 times, knock down their key, make them incredibly vulnerable, poison them, just everything. It was incredible. So I think there could be some balancing. They did some balance adjustments in a recent patch when it came to building proficiency with your weapons and some of the damage outputs of enemies. So they are tweaking the game already and responding to feedback, and it already immediately felt better in the terms of progression when I played it last night after that patch. But yeah, man, this game's sort of been my go-to as quickly as possible.
There was one
whenever
other
I
thing
have a moment.
you were mentioning. There's one thing that came up that was, oh, you mentioned, okay. Oh God, dude. So listen to this. So I'm reviewing this game, and at some point I had the PS4 on a different region. So I switch regions to play the game, and I, probably because I was playing against patrons in Europe. So I switch, and somehow my online doesn't get turned on. So I have no revenants, but I also have no AI helpers.
Oh boy.
So I didn't have AI helpers in that game until probably 14 hours in. So I ended up fighting the horse guy with the shit weapon, the Kirasagama, which against him, from what I'm hearing, is like one of the more difficult weapons. I just happened to be using that. Plus, I had never in the game yet, even once, brought somebody in or hired the AI to fight, or fought a Revenant to get anything. So
I thought they had AI ones. But I'm not sure.
They do, but they didn't show up. Everything was offline, and I don't know that. Like, so you're supposed to get red, what do you call it, and blue, with red being the Revenant, and blue being the AI.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because I switched. I don't know what it was, but they did not show up until I had fought the horse boss 124 times, and I beat him on my 140th attempt. So so for 11 hours, I fought just the horse guy.
You have more patience than I.
Yeah. Oh, my wife even came in. She's like, I just went to church. I went to a doctor's appointment and a dentist appointment and did soccer and martial arts, and you're still playing the same guy? And I'm like, yep. And it was, and I posted a picture in my Discord of me, of like the number, because you can go in and look at the enemies, and it was at 140, and they were just like, what the fuck? But again, there was multiple things that were working against me. Number one, I was reviewing it. There's nobody you can talk to. I couldn't ask anybody. Like, I had no clue what I was doing wrong.
Yeah, that's the intimidating part. When they first told me that I was getting a code back on Thursday before the game released, I was like, okay, this is like going to be a real challenge, because if I get caught and I'm like not able to figure out a boss, it's not like I can just search it up. Yeah,
dude.
So I was like, I really need to make sure I'm paying attention to everything that's happening in game. And and they didn't give me the code until the day before embargo lifted, but still, it was one of those things where I was kind of like mentally preparing for that over the weekend. I was like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, it's and I'm okay. Like, I wasn't even mad. It's weird. I don't know why I wasn't mad, but I was just like, whatever. I was mad when the AI wasn't showing up. I didn't even get and this was probably a bug, by the way, because I was playing it early, but I didn't even get a prompt saying there was AI. I didn't get a tutorial saying there was AI. I got nothing. So I didn't know you could even bring AI in. I got the cups, and I was going in and buying items, and the game froze, and when I rebooted the game, then there were AI in there. So the only reason I even knew there were AI was because I rebooted the game, and they were then in the game. But prior to that, I was not seeing any. I wasn't seeing any blue or red. What do you call it?
Weird.
Graveyards.
I'm trying to remember if when I got the first Ichoko Cup, for those who don't know, that's the thing you have to spend to call in the aid. I don't remember if when I got my first one, if it gave me a little pop-up tutorial, because I remember when I first started the game, Cowboy actually talked about this a couple episodes ago when he was on, not this previous one, but like before that, about how like sometimes, I don't know if it's like a content creator thing, like you kind of tab through the tutorial, like, I know what the fuck I'm doing. Come on, I play enough games. I just remember like during the first hour, this game was like menu, tutorial, big write-up, like humongous write-up, just constantly. So I feel like I went through so many menus there to sort of familiarize myself with everything that I probably maybe saw it and just didn't think of it or anything. I was like, oh yeah, I know how this works.
I would assume people probably did. I record the entire game on the external, so, and I didn't, because I did go back and look. But like I said, I personally feel that since I rebooted it and was in a different time zone that I was just getting. I could have even been playing an earlier version because I was in, and not the patched version until like 2 days prior. So, which was fine. Like I said, it was funny. I think it's a testament to the game that I was not angry. I don't know how to describe it. I was just like, huh. Like I lost again. Okay. And I was sort of impressed by the number of moves, so I wasn't really mad. I was just like, wow, there's a lot of moves. It's pretty crazy. And then after that, defeating bosses was no big. That's another thing. We talked about this with Neo 1. You fight the chick, and every boss, every enemy you fight after that's like not cake, but your brain is attuned to a difficult enemy. And so I left that horse guy and just ruined multiple people after that. I was just like,
the game definitely has a boss difficulty. I don't know if it's I don't want to say it's an issue, because what you just said
just weird.
Is why
it's just weird. Yeah, it's not an issue.
It's just I would have said it was an issue literally 15 seconds ago until you said brain adjusting to a certain difficulty, because I was like, some bosses are clearly very difficult, but some are just knowingly easy. Like, you hop in.
Yep.
Like, there's the guy who I believe you fought him. 20 hours in. He's got the elephant spirit guardian. He shoots like a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
He's got a sword. You fight him in a little encampment. Very, very clearly easy. Like you can get him first try. And there's a lot of bosses you can get first try, but there's clearly some that ramp up the difficulty. And now that you say that with the setting the standard of the difficulty, it sort of created this imbalance of, will this be easy or will this be hard?
Right.
Where every fight I kind of go into neutral and let the moveset decide for me. And there are some really tough ones in there, but there are definitely some easy ones, which I think conflicts with the identity a bit and can bewilder folks. Like, there were some fights that I thought to myself, wait, no way. I'd really beat him in like a minute. I think it's interesting because then you forget that the level beforehand you died like 5 times getting to the boss.
Yeah, and
that may have been the difficulty.
I had no issue with the guys that show up and they jump up and they do the body slam onto the ground. They're the mini bosses. So here's what's weird: never died a single time.
Lucky bastard.
Right, that's the thing. And I knew you were going to say that, because every person I've talked to, they ruined them. And in Doom, by the way, which we'll talk about in a bit, has an enemy identical in that kind of situation. So what I believe is that Neo 2 probably isn't imbalanced too much. What it probably has, though, is there's probably something there that should indicate to a larger degree visually or in some way that you do need to switch weapons, or maybe feed you a bit more data on how to defeat them. Because I only defeated that guy because the Kurosagama on the lowest stance is fuck fast. Like, it's stupid. And he could not do anything. But strangely enough, bro, in the fucking normal fights against villagers or a dude with a bow and arrow on a roof, there were multiple times where I would like be swinging, and in the middle of the swing, because of the way the Kurosagama works, there's a delay. There's like, you're not doing anything, and I would get an arrow to the back and die. So I was having no issue in one section. What I was going to bring up, here's a bug or here's a feature they need to fix, or a bug that has to be fixed. Unless you can tell me it's already fixed. When I was reviewing this, if I had 2 weapons and one was a positive for high stance, right? Like, it did more damage high stance. And let's say my other weapon was a middle or low stance. If I was in fucking high stance in one weapon and switched to the other weapon, it would automatically match stances. That is a shit design if that's real. That is a shit design.
Okay, so let me just make sure I heard it right. So, like, you would spear in high stance, and let's say that's where it's proficient, and you had a sword that's good in mid stance. If you switched to the sword, it would switch it to the sword in high stance.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Does that is that real? As in, is like, was I playing a bug, or is that the design? Because I fucking hate that.
I would imagine that was intentional, and the only reason I say that is because there's combos that you can do that let you switch your weapons, and combos that you can do that let you switch your stances. So it's probably just something they didn't think of in a more complex process than they had to have made it. I'll have to check, because I've never specifically noted that, because in fights, I don't like to switch weapons because it's one of my complaints. When I'm playing a game that requires me to be mobile, and this really, the control isn't bad. It's just in the moment, I think it's bad. Or if I needed to switch weapons, I would rather just keep using the weapon that may not be as effective because I have to stop moving, hold R1, press down on the D-pad, and by then, someone could be right up on your ass a lot closer than you wanted them to be. And so for me personally, just taking your thumb off the left analog stick to switch, I don't like that per se. And so for me, I would have to verify what you're asking, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was intentional. That you're in the high stance, you're switching weapons, you're in the high stance still.
Yeah, and the reason why that was so bothersome for me is because in groups of enemies, the Kurosagama might work against one dramatically better in a crowd control experience than another, like dramatically.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
so
get what you're saying.
I had this one that was or low stance Kurosagama, which was great because that's the fastest stance anyway. And then I had the fucking giant sword, and it was like a mid stance. And what's even worse about that is it's hard for your brain. It's like if it was up or down, it'd probably be different. But instead, it was middle. So it was like not only were you holding a button when you were switching, but you were holding a button, then having to hit the other button to go to the. And it wasn't horrible. It's just I felt it was it was a weird gap. It was like, why did they not think that they're making such a big deal about these weapons in their different stances being positive and negatives? Why would I ever purposely pull the weapon out into the most the biggest disadvantage kind of stance? But that's just me. I don't know. I did see a ton of moves that didn't require, but allowed you to switch stances. And of course you could do the recover the key or and do a key burst or whatever and switch stances later on. But it just felt that I just didn't like it. I'll just say that particular thing.
I get that.
Good game though. Good game.
Very good game.
Awesome enemies.
All right. Any other games you've been playing, or shall we move on into the news?
That's it.
All right, with a 30, we wouldn't even call it an intro at this point, the 37-minute talk, let's move into GameStop. So like I said, we wanted to try to keep this episode in particular as airy as possible on the side of the virus news, we're going to call it, just because I know YouTube said that you're not going to be demonetized for saying it, but I don't trust them. Yeah, but we try to err on the side this episode of not including it, but this story was just too relevant to what we all have consumed from at some point in time and too relevant to the current situation in general to ignore. So both these reports come from Jason Schreier's Kotaku. The struggling video game retail chain GameStop told all of its stores this afternoon to stay open even in the event of a city or state lockdown to protect against the pandemic, emphasizing that it is, quote, essential retail, end quote, alongside groceries and pharmacy, and therefore should be exempt from enforced closures. Quote, due to products we carry that enable and enhance our customers' experience in working from home, we believe GameStop is classified as essential retail and therefore is able to remain open during this time, end quote, the retailer said in a memo to its staff this afternoon obtained by Kotaku. Quote, we have received reports of local authorities visiting stores in an attempt to enforce closure despite our classification. Store managers are approved to provide the document linked below to law enforcement as needed, end quote. The document in question encourages police officers to call GameStop's corporate headquarters if they have a problem with this policy. The retailer said later this afternoon that it would be reducing hours, postponing all events, and suspending used game trade-in until March 29th. All right, so that's the first part, and it's bad, and it still remains bad. But the second part just shines a little bit more of a light on how GameStop is approaching this. So Jason Schreier also reported that GameStop shut down their stores in California. GameStop is shutting down its stores in California, Kotaku has learned. This news comes one day after the struggling retailer told all of the U.S. employees to ignore state lockdown measures in the wake of the virus, insisting that it was essential retail business. Quote, we are closing our stores in California, the company said in a note to stores. Quote, the closure will remain in effect until further notice as we obtain more information from the California governor's office, end quote. California is one of the few states in the country to have enacted a full lockdown policy and told non-essential businesses to close. Two GameStop employees told Kotaku that they've been told to use personal time or file for unemployment as they will not be paid while stores are shut down. A representative for GameStop Corporate did not return requests for comment about how the company plans to proceed or whether it will be closing stores in New York or Pennsylvania, which are also locking down businesses. Oh, man. All right, Karak, I had a very impassioned video on this topic. You've had some time to simmer down. Did I get your blood boiling a little bit rereading all of that?
I was going to say I haven't simmered down at all.
Oh, my. I'm sorry for assuming.
That's all right. Well, first, the one thing I do want to add is I don't really want to control how a company handles their, so if they shut down, right, they can choose to make you use, because it's not their choice to shut down. Like, as in, well, it is, but what I'm saying is the government's saying you need to shut down, so they shut down. They can make you use your sick time. It sucks and it's a bad choice, but they're not the only ones. I think the difference between all this stuff is that in particular, they're completely not at all the only ones doing that. There's many companies doing that. It still sucks. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah.
What pisses me,
with the situation.
Yeah. What pisses me the fuck off is, first of all, they got caught in a lie, which was awesome. The very first thing says, we believe that we are essential service. First of all, they cannot believe that. The state ordinance, there's no chance for them stating we believe. There is no we believe. You either are or you're not. Secondly, then in the email that they wrote, they actually state due to our classification. So they're lying. In one they say we believe, and in the other say due to, you need to tell the police this. So I contacted the police department and I stated, if you were given this, what would occur? Now, the only thing I can speak to like expertise on is this, because I worked at HP, and every single day the number one thing that we were always working on was police liaison and dealing with police department, and this was a company dealing with police department, coming on the company to respond or do things. And I can tell you right now, no manager and no employee would have been backed up legally if anything had occurred. And what I mean by legally, if anything occurred, I don't mean a fist fight with a cop or something strange. I mean, if you refuse a police officer, they can actually then at that point arrest you. So that company put them all 100%. There is absolutely no arguing this point. I've already checked into it. They put them at a legal risk if they do that. So what I was saying in my video is you absolutely need to make sure you have legal representation if you were going to come through with what GameStop asked you to do. And then So they're basically saying you need to tell the police officers no and tell them to call this number. Every police officer I talked to, including 8 who responded on the YouTube channel, which I then verified they were real police officers, because who knows on YouTube.
Of course.
There was about 12 who responded, but 8 responded back and gave me proof. All 8 stated at no particular time in any way, shape, or form would the stopping of the business closing ever occur if they handed that paper. In no way, shape, or form would any telephone calls be made. And what would happen was they would take the paper and say, thank you very much, and close the store. It absolutely means nothing. But what sucks is GameStop purposely put their people at a legal risk. And I'm telling you right now, there is nobody who would have done that without already checking. And somebody would have had to have told them that. This is basic level shit. And so their entire corporation tried to fuck over all their people to stay in business. And I think they were just hoping nobody would, like, it's the virus, right? So they're thinking we can get away with it because everybody's so busy worrying about all this other shit. But they're a shit whore company, and forever I'll hate them. And I'm going to make sure. I mean, I'm legitimately putting steps in place on the channel that in no way, shape, or form will anybody ever forget this has happened. Like, at my entire career from now on YouTube is going to make sure that they go out of business. I fucking hate them. I think that they have been a shit company for a long time, but now I have an unrelenting hatred for them, and I'm going to do everything I can to ruin them. And I've got people who are like, yeah, man, you know, you're advocating people lose their jobs. No, I'm not, because I'm not saying I don't want another company to replace them. And if there is an open market, another company will replace them. But everybody I know at GameStop, and I have a ton of friends who are at GameStop, I have Discord people, none of them want to work. None of them. Mm-hmm. They want to go home. And this company's trying to fuck their people over. Did you hear that phone call, by the way?
No, I didn't know there was one available.
Dude, I put it in my video. Oh my God, there's a phone call. Somebody snuck in, and this has been verified. They recorded the phone call between all of the district managers calling into the district lead and saying, "Can we shut down?" And there's terror in their voice, like terror. They're all, "Can we please shut down? Can we please not accept gamepads that are dirty or from a person coughing?" And they're like, "Nope, unless you can't resell it." And the thing about what people don't realize about GameStop is that's legalese because they clean them to sell them. So he caught that employee in a, catch-21. Like, there's no way out of that. You can't say you can't sell it until you clean it.
Trapped.
Yeah, and the craziest thing was one of the main leads at that company while they're talking says, "Yeah, well, life's not perfect." And I'm just like, all right, man, you're done. Like, I mean, I get it. People can be mad at me if they want. In no way, shape, or form do I want somebody's life ruined or not for them to have a job. But that needs to go. Like, or at the very minimal, I'll just say this. I don't necessarily need the company to be gone, but I will work forever to get those CEOs replaced. And anything they do, I'll make sure to make a video on it. Like, even the smallest infraction, I'm going to make sure to make a video on it. They need to be gone.
I understand. I understand, and it's unacceptable what they're doing. Because when I tweeted about it, because I was going to make a video, but there was a project I've spent about a month and a half on, working on pretty diligently between filming, editing, shots, prop collection, what have you, where I was just like, this is stupid. I'm going to make a tweet about it, but I'm not going to make a video about it because I didn't want to jeopardize that project. But when I tweeted, I had said how I thought it was just a last-ditch effort. It was so clear, like the writing was on the wall. They know, okay, we're now in a situation officially, people are slowly whittling off of physical media and are choosing to go digital. Now the safest, smartest method of consumption of that medium that they are selling is digital. And eventually, now we're seeing stores are closing, and GameStop knows they cannot absorb that blow. And I imagine when they were getting Reggie on board, which was announced before all of this started to pick up, and some of their transitions, I made a video dedicated to GameStop on how there were some stores that had changes in them.
Yeah.
They had like gaming chairs, lines of TVs. Looked like more of a hangout place. Looked like a good future, and I imagine part of their future probably would have been some type of, they had to have some digital program up their sleeve, you'd imagine, or in progress. But yeah, man, it's clear that they couldn't get that done in time for what none of us really could have predicted.
Yeah,
just
true.
a month ago.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm not justifying it, of course, so people know, but I just want folks to understand why they're making the decision. It is heartless. It is cold, especially life's not perfect. That's awful. But this is why they are making the decision, because they were kind of against the ropes, and now someone's coming in and delivering a clothesline that's going to tip them out of the Royal Rumble, essentially. And it sucks in one manner because I get it as a consumer. I think a lot of people think like we get all our games for free, but there are many I do not.
Way more than that we get, or at least for me.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Like I buy 10,000 times more games than I get.
Yeah,
for free.
I do too, for sure. Because I like Nintendo games. I'm a huge advocate for them. If you guys know, I've been talking positively on the Switch since it came out. I kind of ate my words on when I said before the Switch came out how it wouldn't sell 40 million units in 4 years. I think it's going to pass that and well below that time. Yeah, I was complete. But yeah, I don't get a lot of my games early is kind of the moral of the story. Now, one thing I do want to quickly address is I may sound drastically different at this point in the show. And that's because we had a little bit of a break in between there. Mid-sentence, I'd like to kind of describe it as my mic almost set on fire. So I thought that my computer just like shorted out or something, because what happened on my end was I was looking at Audacity, which is my audio recorder for those who don't know, and I saw the recording just flat out stop. Like my mic wasn't there, and I was like, oh shit, all right, I'm just gonna. So I told Karak, I was like, oh, hold up, Karak, it stopped on my end. I'm just gonna restart my sentence. We'll get a new recording going, and then I get a message from you, and you're just like, are you there? You cut out. I'm just like, oh no, can't hear me at all. So I go to reset my microphone, right? I go to unplug it, and when I touch the base of the USB to the microphone, my Blue Yeti, by the way, something that I think a lot of you commentators will be familiar with. It practically could have set on fire. And I was having power surge problems with this microphone for a while. That's why I bought the SM7B and was going to set it up in my studio space before all this virus stuff happened. But yeah, I was having surge problems with it. It was on its last legs, and it overheated so badly that the USB itself started to bend. So quickly unhooked that, and here we are using my father's microphone, which is better than mine, it seems.
Yeah, at least on my end, it's got a little less heat to it. It sounds good.
It's also probably because he has like a legit microphone cover for this. The one that I bought for mine was like completely oversized, and I don't know why it was, but yeah, his came with this is a nice microphone. Like this, mine was from like 2014, so it gave me a good run. But this Yeti he's got here is it's pretty nice, pretty handy. But as we were saying, or rather as I was saying, when it came to GameStop and closing, I just wanted to highlight one of the more vital parts about it and why we weren't like essentially pushing for the complete closure of them, but rather their higher ups being knocked out, is because I personally still make good use of their trade-in program. As much as I love to collect physical media, and I'd love to be one of those YouTubers with a ton of games on my shelves lining my whole room, I just sometimes can't afford that. Like I can't afford to just go spend another $60 on a new game and throw it on the shelf. And not every company hands out physical copies. They usually send you a digital code for review when you do get one. So it's not like I also have the means to just buy another game on top of all that. So GameStop's trade-in program has saved my bacon more times than one. Because when I was tweeting about this, I was contacted by someone who worked at GameStop and was like, well, we need to work. You know, I live paycheck to paycheck. And it's like, we're not asking for people like you to suffer, but I think the priority here is that you're healthy and not being put at not only health risks, but Karak shined, I think, a brighter light on the legal risks. The legality of the situation, I think, is arguably heavier in a number of ways. You can get into some real trouble, it sounded like.
Yeah, what's weird to me is that you got that because I not only tweeted once, I tweeted like 15 times, plus I held nothing back on what I thought when I tweeted. I was actually pretty rank, and then I posted.
Nothing wrong with that.
I posted in the YouTube the dashboard what I thought, and then I also did a video, and in all of those, I didn't get a single person who worked there who said, you know, we need to work. They all said, yes, we want to go home. Now, I think that's because also, well, I don't know that, you know, I think that depends on where you are too. Like, because even in someone where I am probably maybe a little less touched than, you know, a metropolis like a San Francisco, you know, a little less maybe worried about it. And it also, of course, some people believe this is like, I even said that in the video. I'm like, I know people who firmly believe there's no illness whatsoever. Even though I know somebody who's died of it now. They firmly believe that there is no illness at all and it's all government conspiracy. And I was like, ignoring even that, just the legality. Just the legality of it is unacceptable. So yeah, like I changed my story, you know, I do want them gone, but I would agree that like it would just be at the minimum, if not a new company, that management needs to be gone. So gone. And then those people could work for a management that's not going to say, you know, life isn't perfect and all the shit, you know, that they were saying. I mean, dude, like, I've worked for companies. Yeah. And I've worked for a couple companies like that. Not many, but a couple. And I'm telling you right now, it may feel better, but dude, seriously, I mean, there's gotta be something else you can do. It shit fucking just sucks. It sucks. I feel for anybody who's in that spot though, too. I mean,
absolutely.
That also sucks.
I imagine it won't be much longer if you're in like New York, or obviously now we saw what happened with California, but it's inevitable that some of the hot spots are going to just start to shut down. And I think I'm just trying to, I guess, bring ease of mind to those who may be working there. I would imagine not many people are going to say, hey, every store is closed but GameStop, let's go to GameStop. I feel like most people will be like, if I want a game, I'm just going to go shop digitally. So I imagine not a lot of employees will come into contact with people, not to justify, but just to hopefully make those who might have to go to work regardless of all of this feel a little bit better about their situation. But yeah, it's unfortunate, and hopefully GameStop wakes up and just kind of cuts their losses, hopes that this virus here blows over as quickly as possible, and maybe they can salvage what's left after the fact.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to the second part of what we're playing. We wanted to save this for its own individual topic because it's a pretty significant day in the meme community, and we've played each of these games individually. We're going to sort of just talk about them in another fun chat. Animal Crossing's out. Doom is out. You've played Doom. I have played Animal Crossing. So let's chat. What do you think of Doom?
It's fucking awesome. It's also I have PTSD from it, but it's awesome.
Well, hold on. What does that mean?
Because, dude, fuck, man. There's a couple enemies in this game, and the way the game plays, it flatly just doesn't give a fuck about like balancing. It's just like, here's some bad guys, figure it out. And so there's some spikes in it, and there's one particular bad guy that if you go to any forum and look at review threads, almost every reviewer pointed out two particular bad guys in this game, and one of them is called the Marauder. And no lie, dude, his tutorial, when it pops up, says, can block anything. It literally states, and he does. So he blocks any attack whatsoever, and then he unleashes a digital puma that leaps out of him and runs in a circle around you and attacks you from the sides. And the only way to hurt him is to wait until his eyes flash green and hit him. The problem is, if the puma attacks you, a gigantic, 10 times bigger than Sekiro image appears on your screen of teeth from a glow-in-the-dark puma. And it eats up the entire screen. So you will be in the middle of this battle, and suddenly you can't see anything, including the indicator to counter him. And he cannot be hit. He has a huge shield. And it is, no lie, I was looking at the review threads. I didn't say a word about it. I did in the review. I was like, this guy's pretty tough. But then all of a sudden I saw reviewers like US Gamer, PC Gamer posting pictures of this character going, this guy can die in a fire. Like of all the, and no lie, he's that.
Technically.
Yeah, he's rough. And he's not impossible. It's just that they don't do a great job. This game has one particular weakness that I think is, I think most people would agree, even if you love it, which I do. It doesn't do the best with its enemy variety placement. So it has good variety, but it puts people or enemies in places where they don't necessarily move around very well. And I show some video of that. He gets stuck on a lot of shit. Okay. Right? So not only are you thinking...
Yeah, I get that because Neo has the same problem.
Right. So you're sitting there going, okay, I know what he needs to do, so I'm going to wait for him to like come up these steps, and you're waiting, going, I'm waiting, and he doesn't come out, and you run around, and he's stuck on the steps, and you're like, oh, for fuck's sakes. And because now other enemies that you had purposely, moved around the level so you could have a couple seconds with this guy are now on top of you. And, that was pretty rough. I think that they did not do a great job on looking at enemies and going, this guy needs to be here. But instead we're like, you know what? Figure it out, which I'm also cool with. I wasn't ever mad, but I will say this is one of the few games where when he appeared, I legitimately out loud said, please God, no. And I said it multiple times. No lie. And I wasn't like, please God, no. I was like, oh, please. It was that resigned, it was like, oh, please God, no. And he would show up, and he wasn't very fun to fight. That's I guess would be the last thing I'll say about it. He wasn't as fun as everybody else. Everybody else was fine. He just wasn't that fun to fight. He never felt fun using your equipment against him. If that makes sense.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, so that's what was interesting. I made a video because, as I said, I didn't get a review copy, but a lot of people wanted to know my thoughts on what has been said about Doom as someone who covered a lot of Bethesda games, and this seemed to be the first really good Bethesda game, universally praised one in a while. Yeah. I wanted to talk about it. So I did like a cool different piece of content called Reviewing the Reviews, where I sort of just skimmed through some of the headlines and the write-ups and saw what overlapped, what didn't, to sort of, because you'll see tweets saying, US Gamer gave it a 9. IGN gave it a 9. GameStop gave it an 8.5. But they don't tell you why.
Yeah,
obviously, you
can't
fit that into a tweet. So my video idea was sort of expanding on that, saying, like, what if we looked at the score roundup and then how these people generally came to the score and some of the things that they said that maybe were negative that seemed to run the review off course that didn't line up with their scores. And so it was interesting because kind of like what we've had our conversations with about Doom 2016, we've seen a lot of people liking and disliking very different things. Like some people, it seems universally a lot of people didn't like the platforming. It didn't seem to like mesh well unless it was going off the beaten path for secrets. Some people thought it clashed with the level design. Like it's just, there's this random monkey bar here in the middle of hell. What the fuck is this doing here? Which I personally get. But it seemed like a lot of people really enjoyed the movement, the fluidity of the game, how it ran, the power fantasy, if you will. What I was surprised too was a lot of folks cited, just like you did, the difficulty. I never associated Doom with being a super difficult franchise. Like Doom 2016, I never had much of a problem with. And so I was kind of surprised to read that Doom Eternal was a tough game. And granted, this is also based off people I'm following from Bethesda. They're like, I played this on ultra violence, I think, but try it on lower. I think that's what Lone said. And I've just seen a lot of people saying, just play it for fun, but like, hey, this game can be difficult. And I found that very surprising because I just don't align that series with raw difficulty.
Well, it might be also because I saw Lone's post too. One of the things that sort of confused me about his post was he also said he died tons of times. And I think what people forget is that a lot of people don't want to die 1,000 times. And so with this game in particular, I think if you don't want to die thousands of times, it can feel difficult on the higher difficulties. If you're okay and you feel like your skill, even if your skill is good, you're still going to die and you're okay with that, then those higher difficulties are fine. What I would say is on the higher difficulties, what I noticed was getting hit and dying more than I feel the skill cap should have indicated. And I was dying in ways that weren't exactly expected. So for instance, guys that fucking enemies, dude, they shoot so fast in the game, it's hilarious. And they'll be like, okay, there's this flashing red, little tiny flashing red, like light on top of this enemy that you need to hit. Well, guess what? The entire fucking level is magma. So like, how are you going to see the little tiny flashing thing? Plus the enemy runs up the side of the wall. Plus he's surrounded by a marauder who has a puma holograph that eats up the entire screen. And so I would agree. Like I don't know. It is more difficult than 2016. I wouldn't say a ton, but I would say that with 2016, I felt that at some point I knew when I was going to die. There were times in this game where I did not. Okay. If that makes sense. And I was like, well, I died. I feel like that shouldn't have happened. But it didn't eat at me, if that makes sense. The monkey bar thing was dumb.
A lot of people were also seemingly caught off guard by the story focus, but as someone who played a lot of Doom 2016 and sort of paid attention to its community, I remember seeing like a very thorough codex, a lot of lore, and now I know this game has more cutscenes, more to show off. What did you think about that transition to more of a grounded universe and establishing things and really, I guess, building a story, which doesn't seem to fit the identity? Like, was there pacing problems for you? Because there was a lot of things, like I saw there were water levels, there's platforming sections, which were kind of in the middle of combat. And we had this talk about, Rage 2 being the moments of respite from driving point A to point B. Is that what these sort of served as in Doom? Like the cutscenes were you catching your breath, the platforming was you catching your breath. Is that how it felt to you, like, or did it feel out of place?
Oh, there were definitely. I definitely said in the review that there were times where I was like, there is some fluff there that I was like, oh man, like why? And especially, for example, there's one particular jump in the entire game. By the way, there's only one particularly difficult platform jump, but what it is it requires perfection on the timing of the 3 steps: the initial jump, the sprints to the bursts in the air, and then the last jump. Where no other jump in the game, by the way, at all, comes even close to that. And it felt broken because I died like 26 times. I'm like, what is happening? Its requirement is ridiculous. And it never happened again. And that, when I looked back on it, I was like, boy, that was poorly done. Like, that was legitimately poorly done. That somebody should have looked at that and said, these platforms are too far away. But yeah, there's some fluff. Pacing-wise, the story, I wasn't able to talk about it because they had a huge embargo on on a shit ton of stuff. They were like, you can't show, like, I think it was like 3 boss fights they wouldn't allow us to show. They wouldn't allow us to mention, well, I don't want to mention it now because people are just getting it, but there was some stuff that for certain characters you're not allowed to show. Overall, I would say the pacing wasn't too bad with the story stuff. I'm not happy, and this is not a spoiler, but you get the Fortress of Doom as, you know, basically you get your home, right? Which has some cool unlocks. It's fairly basic. What I did not like, and what I cannot understand, is it goes away 3/4 of the way through the game. Maybe even more than 3, maybe a halfway through the game. And I was...
You build this whole thing up and it goes away.
I was completely confused. And they warn you, by the way. They're like, if you go forward from here for the rest of the story, because of the story, you won't have this Fortress of Doom thing. And when I read it, my brain was like, wait, what? Like, because I'm not, you know,
It's like getting rid of the sub in Wolfenstein 2 or something, right? Like,
yeah.
It's just the hub area.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay, it must mean for this like level or something. And then it was like 6 levels later, and I was finally done with the game, and I was like, oh shit, it was gone. Like, and I found that sort of weird because they were still giving you stuff to unlock things. So you collect stuff in the game that you can bring back and unlock items in the Fortress of Solitude thing, Fortress of Doom. And I was still getting those, but I couldn't go back because there was nothing to go back to.
Is there like a new game plus so it kind of wraps around?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I just felt like it made no sense because there were so many levels prior to the new game plus part that it doesn't make sense in the story to remove it. It's weird. It's just like you're just not going back, and you're all right, whatever. But overall, really fun game. I don't think I would consider it the best game. You know, I don't think it'll be considered the best game of the year, but it'll certainly be in the top 5 for most people.
Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, I'm glad it lived up to a lot of folks' expectations. Yep. Do you feel like the delay served it well? I know that might be a rhetorical question, but performance-wise, I'm okay.
Dude, performance is redonkulous in that game, by the way. Man.
It looks silky. Yeah, I've seen some gameplay, and I'm just like, oh, I really want to get my hands on it, but right now with Neo and Animal Crossing, and I'm playing, I didn't mention this in the intro because it would have been like a whole nother like 20 minutes of discussion on it, but I'm playing Legends of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel after many viewers requesting me to do so. I'm finally playing that on my Vita again. I'm giving it a second try, and I'll talk about it later on, but I just want to say I do like it a lot. I'm 20 hours in, but I really do like it. But so right now, just between those 3 games, I'm like, there's no way I can squeeze in Doom. I might do impressions on it if Bethesda decides to fork me over a late code. I doubt they will. But other than that, I've just been playing Animal Crossing on this gigantic crossover day of Unlikely Forces. Now, this is, I don't want to say my first Animal Crossing because I did try New Leaf on the 3DS, but I did not play it for long. I was more interested in Dragon Quest Builders. When that had come out, I bought this around the same time, and this one just sort of, I'm sorry, not this one, I should say Dragon Quest really took over. And I still love Dragon Quest Builders to this day. Just one of my favorite go-to pick-up-and-play games. But as time went on, I was getting excited for Animal Crossing because all my friends were getting it. My girlfriend was getting it. Like, just everyone was on board with this. And like hearing there was multiplayer, I was like, all right, I'm in. Fine, I'll get it. But every time I watched this game, I was always like, I don't get it. I was like, I don't get what people love so much about Animal Crossing. And I'm going to be honest, before I expand on my thoughts, I still kind of don't get it. But I'm going to try to talk about what's good about it in the sake of being understanding, because I think it's a slow burning process. So my first day on the island was last night, and you land there, you name it, you create your character, which is cool. And there's a lot of customization, but the first thing you're going to do is you get hit with a loan. You got to pay off 5,000 miles worth of this island arrival getaway package or something like that. So you're essentially doing in-game challenges like collect 5 fish or collect 5 bugs or chop down 10 trees. And it's all these menial tasks that I've seen in so many other games get ripped for. And I'm just, the first 3 hours, I'm going to be honest, like it flew by because you were always doing something and working towards something. So if you like that carrot at the end of the stick, It's really fun in that manner. It's really engaging in that manner. So I can't say I wasn't having a good time, but the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is literally the same fucking shit I've seen in like Minecraft and Dragon Quest Builders 2 and Stardew Valley. And I was just like, where's the angle, right? Like there's got to be a reason. Not just like, it wasn't just Nintendo. Like, just there got to be a reason why everyone's freaking the fuck out about Animal Crossing. So I woke up today. When I finished last night, I should also mention, I got my 5,000 Nook miles to pay off my first loan to Tom Nook. And I was like, okay, so I accomplished something. And I was like, talking to my friends, and they're like, yeah, so the world changes over time. So as you like go to bed, certain, like I planted someone's, I shouldn't say planted, I set up someone's tent. So when I woke up today and I started up Animal Crossing, this guy had arrived and he wanted to build a museum. So now I have purpose to collect all these fish and all these bugs. I give them to him. He's building a museum while my game's offline now. He also introduced me into pole vaulting, so now I can go to different parts of the island. So that's when I was like, okay, I kind of see it now. Like I see where you can get hooked, because if the game keeps expanding day in, day out, and I have something to look forward to. And mind you, this isn't like one of those games that absorbs, at least from my perspective right now, absorbs like 8 hours a day. Like I got to put all the work in. Like I can play for a couple hours, do my daily activities, see what's changed in my village, and go from there. I kind of like that. I kind of like the pick up and play aspect, and it doesn't demand a ton of my time. But as a whole, what you're doing in Animal Crossing doesn't seem really revolutionary, if I'm quite frank.
Yeah.
I think it might be a product of overhype, which I know some people are going to hate that I have to say that, but I really think it is, because all I got to say is if you like Animal Crossing, there's like 8 different games that have come out before it that have offered similar mechanics. It's just about that day-to-day thing and kind of the surprise that you look forward to. And I think that's what's going to get me to override half the shit I just said, is like, there's nothing else really doing that, where you can close the game and in real time something's happening. And when you come back, the world has changed. I mean, we always talk about how we like seeing dynamic worlds, and this is kind of that. It's like, I accomplished a task. Okay, I gave this guy today 15 different things to display in the museum. And so tomorrow or the day after, I'm going to sign into my world, and there will be a full-on friggin' museum set up that I can go to. And that's like exciting to know that, kind of like in the real world, like things are changing, things are evolving, developing based off investments and stuff. And speaking of investments, it's got these cool quirks. Like, it's clearly a kid's game in a number of ways, but you can deposit bells, which is the game's currency, into the bank, and you can gain interest on it. It's just like you can kind of get business savvy with it. So it's got a lot of personality. It's cute, but I'm not blown away yet. It's just kind of like a fun thing. But I think over time, my opinion may shift on it, because I really like that daily change thing, and that could be more impactful than anything else in this game, because it's giving me purpose to keep going back in, and that's all you can really ask for.
It's weird you say that, because the people I've talked to, like when I ask them why they like it or even what you do, they never answer me. No lie. Literally, no one's ever answered me. It's the weird.
I get it.
Yeah, and it's I have a really good friend. She is a translator. She's into these kind of games, Japan style games, and she likes these, and she's getting it. But every time I see her Twitter or another friend of ours, and I'm like, so what do you do? There is no answer.
Because if you describe it like I just did, it's like, oh fuck, I can do that in how many other games?
Yeah, it's just it's odd. I mean, yeah.
Here, I'll describe it to you a little bit. Like I fished, and you know, each fish has their own little entry in the Critterpedia or whatever it's called. It's a little encyclopedia that covers all the creatures in the universe. Nintendo's got a fucking obsession with durability, by the way, like really bad durability, because the I almost said weapons, like kind of like in a,
you mean like
Breath
the
of the
fishing
Wild,
pool
how
falls
shit
apart
breaks.
or something?
Yeah, your fishing pole fall apart after, the axle break. Fortunately, you can get tools that are better and do last a lot longer,
Right.
and are built out of stronger materials. But yeah, like my initial couple of hours have been fish, chopping down some trees, getting some logs. You know, I traded them into a store because I traded them into, I think it's like Tom Nook's son or something like that. and he's going to build a shop if I give him 30 pieces of all these different types of wood and 30 iron nuggets. Like, everything I've heard people complain about in open world fetch quests is like the core gameplay loop to Animal Crossing. They collect X of this, but the difference is something will happen in the world that's substantial and kind of rewarding. And I think that's the hook, because I like it. I don't know. I like it, but I'm not in love with it. And I think I could fall in love with it over time, because I do like these sim style games. You know, I like the feeling of building something and having my world change over time. And everyone's opening villagers are different, so that's also kind of exciting. I'm curious to see what Nintendo does with it. I don't think they've ever done DLC with Animal Crossing, so I wonder if they're going to have any forms of expansion packs, because there's a lot of customization when it comes to furniture and decorations and clothing you can wear. You can make your own shirt designs, which is awesome. So there's a lot of that type of stuff that I think you're going to see like designs on people's shirts just floating around on the internet for sure. It's very different, but it's fun. I like it.
I think also it probably fits in the same line of like a Sims, you know, where you're just like living life and doing random stuff. And, you know, I like that. The reason why I don't really diss on people liking that game, even though I probably wouldn't diss on it anyway, but the reason why I don't is because I like the Sims, and you're just, each day you're doing something and something happens, and sometimes that's all you need. You know,
and that's kind of what's happening here.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it's hard to explain that other than it's therapeutic almost. You know, it's a therapeutic game. It's just...
Yeah, especially with like intense Neo just kind of staring me down.
Doom.
It is,
you know, all the... Yeah.
It definitely is a good change of pace, and that's what I also like about it. It's I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, Animal Crossing, save us, the world sucks now. But I can see why, like, having something fun and cheery to look forward to every day. Like, you kind of, like, for me at least, I know I'm going to have fun on Neo. But just knowing that, like, a changing world's kind of happening in my Switch, and I can hop into that and spend a couple hours there. I get what people mean by it's, like, a little therapeutic, for sure. It's cute. It's fun. I do like it, for sure. I'm glad I spent $60 on it. Although I was trying to avoid that. I had these... This is just an off the beaten path story here, but it's kind of funny. I had at Best Buy, I bought a new laptop because I swear all my electronics for my channel are breaking this year.
Jesus,
my laptop had busted this year, and so I was like, okay. Before this whole virus thing happened, I was like, I'm probably going to travel for work. I am going to buy a new laptop, so I invested in one. And when I did, I used my credit card for Best Buy, and they were like, okay, so you built up like rewards and you will have like $100 in credit down the line. I was like, okay, cool. And then as these games approached, I looked at that. I looked at my wallet and I said, oh, wait, I got this credit. And essentially what happened was, I'm sorry, it was $60. That's what it was. It was $60 of credit. And so this is fucking hilarious, actually, now that I think about it, because it's actually, I've never heard of this. So I'm thinking... Originally, I was going to buy Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights, along with Tides of Numenera, I think it's called, on the Switch. They had two $30 packages, and the package totaled up to, I think, with tax and everything, like $65. I was like, okay, I'm going to use the $60 in rewards, and I'm going to pay the rest of the tax and shipping with my debit card or whatever, and it wouldn't work. And so I get on the phone with Best Buy support. And long story short, after like an hour of conversation, I find out that you can only use your certificate on items that are exactly that price or I think more.
Weird.
So I'm like, okay, I have $60 in certificates. I'm like, I'm just going to go find a brand new $60 game, right? So I'm thinking of games coming out. What will I likely not get a game code for? I have to account for this. I'm like, Animal Crossing, of course.
Right.
You know, I'm not... Nintendo's never given me a code before, nor do I expect one, or am I entitled to one. So I'm like, okay, I'll put Animal Crossing for this reward thing. And so $59.95, I think, was the price. And I'm like, all right, add to cart, use my rewards. Didn't work because it was not $60.
Weird.
So I had a 5-cent difference preventing me from using the rewards. I did find a $65 thing on Best Buy that came with not only the game, but some like little plushy thing. And that did work. So I think it was 60 or more. But yeah, it was ridiculous. And so I finally did that. Now this whole virus breaks out. I was not able to go to the store because the store had shut down. And so it's just sitting there, and I was like, all right, now I got to digitally download it. So I ended up spending my money on it anyways in this long, unnecessary story. Anything else you want to say on Doom or Animal Crossing before we move on to our next little bit of news?
No, would Animal Crossing's graphics be like what's the level of those? Like, are they like AAA level?
I would define it more as an art style.
Okay,
I would
gotcha.
define it more as an art style. It's good to look at, but it's not like, wow, sharp visuals and amazing CGI cutscenes. It's a good art style.
Okay.
The resolution of it is good. It definitely, I play in handheld mode and it looks good and you can see things clearly. It's a pretty game, and for what it is, like the water, it's like, think of Octopath Traveler. Remember how we were like, the art is very pretty, but the water looks good. Same thing here.
Okay.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on to the PlayStation 5 tech demo. So PlayStation fans' patience were rewarded this past week. We received a deep dive from Mark Cerny on the tech of PlayStation 5. Some folks' expectations were placed in the region of thinking we were going to get games and trailers and a price and a box. I expected the box personally. That was the one thing that kind of surprised me. But people were very disappointed. And there was a lot to take away from the tech demo. Karak, I do have like a general roundup, but also I know you're our tech guy here on this show. So if you would rather lead off, or shall I just read a little bit about the PS5?
Oh no, you can. Yeah, you can. No, you can read off first, and then we can talk about that.
All right. So in the summary, these are the core details covered once again from Eurogamer. The technical specifications of PlayStation 5 and its innovative boost approach to the core clocks, the features of the PS5 GPU, how the solid-state drive helps deliver the next-generation dream, how Sony tackles expandable storage, and unprecedented 3D audio fidelity via the Tempest 3D audio engine. For those who are unfamiliar, that's the part where Mark Cerny said he would take a picture of your ears. And I found that part hilarious.
Oh, dude.
So we're just going to be borrowing some paragraphs through this article. On a basic level, we already know that the PlayStation 5 uses AMD's excellent Zen 2 CPU technology, with prior communications confirming 8 physical cores and 16 threads. But now we know how fast they are clocked, with PS5 delivering frequencies up to 3.5 gigahertz. Discussing the nature of the CPU and GPU clock speeds is going to require some careful explanation, because Cerny described frequencies as being capped. For the CPU, 3.5 gigahertz is at the top end of the spectrum, and he also suggests that it is the typical speed, but under certain conditions, it can run slower. So anything, do you want me to go through we'll go through the whole
if you want
PlayStation
to
5.
Yeah, if you want to go through the whole thing, and then we can just discuss the random stuff.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure. PlayStation 5 CPU, we're going to just go down the whole spec list for those who didn't care to sit down during what folks have called a lecture now, which I understand. 8 times Zen 2 core processor at 3.5 gigahertz with SMT, as I had read earlier. 10.28 teraflops, 36. You're going to have to explain this one to me. What's a CU?
Computational unit.
Computational unit at 2.23 gigahertz. See, we all learn together, ladies and gentlemen. The GPU architecture is a custom RDNA 2. Memory/interface, 16 gigabyte GDDR6/256-bit. Memory bandwidth is 48 gigabytes per second, which is a pretty vast improvement. The internal storage is a custom 825 gigabyte solid-state hard drive. The expandable hard storage, I think we are able to tweak this time around, but it does mention a NVMe SSD slot. There is a USB support for external storage, and it does have a 4K Blu-ray drive. Now let's talk a little bit about the PlayStation 5 Boost. According to Eurogamer, it's important to clarify that the PlayStation 5's use of the variable frequencies. It's called boost, but it should not be compared with similarly named technologies found in smartphones or even PC components like CPUs and GPUs. Their peak performance is tied directly to the thermal headroom, so in high temperature environments, gaming frame rates can be lower, sometimes a lot lower. This is entirely at odds with expectations from a console, where we expect all machines to deliver the exact same performance. To be abundantly clear, from the outset, PlayStation 5 is not boosting clocks in this way. According to Sony, all PS5 consoles process the same workloads with the same performance levels in any environment, no matter what the ambient temperature may be. So how does boost work in this case? Put simply, the PlayStation 5 is given a set power budget tied to the thermal limits of the cooling assembly. It's a completely different paradigm, says Cerny. Rather than running at constant frequency and letting the power vary based on the workload, we run essentially at the same constant power and let the frequency vary based on the workload. So there is that for the boost. Scrolling down a little bit more, there's the graphics core. On the face of it, PlayStation 5 delivers a ton of power, but there does seem to be an extra onus on developers to optimize to these new characteristics. The question is, what happens when the processor does hit its power limit and components downclock? In his presentation, Mark Cerny freely admits that GPU and CPU won't always be running at 3.5 gigahertz and 2.23 gigahertz respectively. When that worst case game arrives, it will run at a lower clock speed, but not too much lower to reduce power by 10%. It only takes a couple of percent reduction in frequency, so I'd expect any downclocking to be pretty minor, he explains. All things considered, the change to a variable frequency approach will show significant gains for PlayStation gamers. Now, I think this one may be the most important part, or I should say relevant part, not important. Most relevant part, most familiar for those of you who don't pay attention to tech. We talked about the solid state drive and how it's delivering the next gen dream. This is sort of what Cerny opened up to in the middle section of this conference. The nature of the SoC and its features is important, and so much of it is new information and crucial information based on feedback from our audience. However, what's clear from the presentation is that Mark Cerny has different priorities, and there's the small matter of the next-gen dream to consider. Two very specific components are in play here, the SSD and the remarkable piece of 3D audio hardware dubbed the Tempest engine. Sony is doubling down on solid-state storage in providing a truly transformative next-generation experience. Every couple of years, Mark Cerny travels the world, meeting with dozens of developers and publishers, and the integration of SSD was the number one next-gen request, which I can definitely see. Sony's actual implementation is something else, with performance rated at 2 orders of a magnitude faster than the PlayStation 4. 2 gigabytes of data can be loaded in a quarter of a second, meaning that in theory, the entirety of a PlayStation 5's 16 gigabytes can be filled in just 2 seconds. As game creators, we go from trying to distract the player from how long fast travel is taking, like those Spider-Man subway rides, to being so blindingly fast that we might even have to slow the transition down, said Cerny. Delivering 2 orders of magnitude improvement in performance required a lot of custom hardware to seamlessly marry the SSD to the main processor. A custom flash marries up the SSD modules via a 12-channel interface, delivering the required 5.5 gigabytes of performance with a total of 825 gigabytes of storage. This may sound like a strange choice for storage size when considering that consumer SSDs offer 512 gigabytes, 1 terabyte or more of capacity, but Sony's solution is proprietary. 825 gigabytes is the most optimal match for the 12-channel interface, and there are advantages to that too. In short, Sony had more freedom to adapt its design. We can look at the available NAND flash parts and construct something with optimal price performances. Someone constructing an M2 drive presumably does not have the freedom. It would be difficult to market and sell if it were not one of those standard sizes. So I'm going to stop there because essentially we don't want to just regurgitate exactly what Cerny said, but just to give a general roundup for those who didn't want to sit through what was like an hour-ish amount of time. So with that information out there, Karak, what was your biggest takeaway from what Sony's doing right now with the PlayStation 5? If any at all.
I think that they got caught by the larger numbers on the Xbox, and so what we got was an announcement that was supposed to happen at GDC prior to the Xbox announcing their numbers, and so it came across weird to a lot of people. Like, why are they talking about this and that? Also, there's a lot of bullshit in that. Just like there was a lot of bullshit in Microsoft's. They were pretending some of the stuff that they had created was theirs. Just like I brought up that Microsoft pretended that their ray tracing, their custom ray tracing, they said exists in the Xbox X Series. Really what they're saying is that the Xbox X Series has the APU for AMD in it, which does ray tracing, and they have added like one line of code, so they call it their own customized, which is exactly what Cerny does. But a lot of it is complete bullshit. For example, when they say you could load an entire game in 2 seconds into your system, technically, if you want to pretend that that's the only system that could do that, you could, but you wouldn't need to load the full game in, which is completely, that is almost like saying my car goes 1 billion miles an hour, but it would kill me at 400 miles an hour. It's completely ludicrous. Additionally, the Xbox could do it in 4 seconds, but neither game needs to load the entire world in any seconds. He also pretended like load screens have existed in every single game, where we have hundreds of games with no load screens. So also, the one thing that has really bothered me that I don't know why it's being said, but is factually scientifically false, is that there's been people who pretended that now, remembering that the Xbox has super fast NVMe memory as well, both do. People have been pretending that somehow the GPU and CPU can be, I guess, have reality broken, and because an SSD is so fast, you can actually put more on the screen, ignoring the throughput of the CPU or the GPU, which is factually incorrect. It's absolutely incorrect. It's a complete lie. You cannot do that. So if you have a game and it's just filled with boxes, you will not be able to magically draw more boxes on one than the other in a like-for-like situation in this example. It's a complete lie. You can't. So what was going on is a lot of the stuff he was saying was more for the people at GDC, which is why to some people it sounded really disingenuous, and to other people it sounded really cool. What you have is a system that's really fast in the hard drive against a system that's very fast in the hard drive. But you have two crucial things that Sony fucked up horrendously. Backwards compatibility is a mess.
I was going to say,
yeah.
That sounded really bad. Let's get into that.
The other thing, which we'll get into later then, is they fucked up external storage in the exact way I said I didn't think anybody would choose to do in your Discord about 4 months ago.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And I said there's no way a company would be dumb enough to fuck up and have split or different types of externals. And not only did Sony do that, but they actually admitted during that event they have no clue which NVMEs are even acceptable for that. Their external storage solution is fucked. Like, I don't think anybody in the world is going to tell you it's not, because we also know NVMe is supposed to rise in price. Currently, the NVMe that you would need to match their internal speeds that they want you to believe is about $350 to $400. And that's a single chip. You can't get a chip smaller. So there's some issues there. But anyway, backwards compatibility. Xboxes doesn't require developers. PS4 does. PS4's got 100 they've tested. They did tweet today and say, no, we've got more. But I think we all know that they started really late. Xbox then tweeted this morning, right after Sony tweeted, and said, no worries, we've got over 1,000. So it's like they've already stated PS4, PS3 will not be PS3, PS2 will not be backwards compatible. Microsoft said Xbox and Xbox 360 and Xbox One are. So I think that's where you'll see Microsoft, trying to poke some holes, is like, move forward if you want. If you don't want to move forward, you don't have to. But they're back. I don't know.
It's the verbiage of their backwards compatibility. When Cerny came out and said it, he said it's going to be the top 100, where I was like, okay, we already knew they started late. This sounds about right. Then PlayStation provides this update, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but let's just read this one sentence. We believe that the overwhelming majority of the 4,000 plus PS4 titles will be playable at launch. Now, I'm not saying that as they were developing this hardware that they didn't think of the PS4 library, but all I'm saying is the words "we believe" are inherently protective, because if it goes south, they can just point at this sentence and be like, we didn't say it was going to happen. We said we believed. We thought it might.
Yeah.
That was just a thought,
And
though.
they made sure to point it out. One positive to Cerny, and positive to really all the new companies, is they've all been very clear when there was something weird. And he did state very clearly that devs had to be involved. I think that's your biggest mistake on Sony's part. It's not a mistake. I should rephrase that. The biggest problem on Sony's part is that the devs of the original game have to be involved. He distinctly stated that engine clocks can fuck up on their system because of how they're doing the boost, where on the Xbox, there is nothing that has to be touched. It puts it in, it does its own anti-aliasing or up-resing, it changes everything, and you're just good to go. I think the big thing there is something we've seen with the Xbox 360. When it did backwards compatibility, it also required the devs, and it was never fully supported because the devs don't even exist for some games. Legitimately don't exist, as in there is no company to do the backwards compatibility because the game developer is gone. So you're going to see streaming PS3 and PS2 games. Like, I think that's just a given. That'll be where they are. Unfortunately, that's up to you to decide if that's what you want to, jump into. But
yeah, and for Microsoft, they're not streaming it, but like there's definitely the situation where you put KOTOR in and it downloads the game, and essentially the disc kind of serves as like an emulator, I believe it was. And so it's not like Microsoft's like letting you just straight up put the disc in and boom, it's magic.
No, it will for the new one, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah, the Xbox One is not the same as the Xbox X. Xbox X should not require, what they're stating is it does not require anything.
The download?
Right.
Just put the disc in?
You just put the disc in. And that would be...
I mean, that's certainly something I would like.
It's like a PC. Because a PC doesn't require... A PC does not require... If I put my game on a PC, as long as there's no patch, like day one patch with bugs, I can run it on my PC or my wife's with no downloads required. And yet
cool.
mine's super
You know what
powerful.
I mixed it up with? I was thinking of... I did remember reading that. I crossed it up with Smart Delivery, where that does require a patch.
Yeah, you're
that's
absolutely right.
That's forwards compatibility, though. That's where I crossed it up. Yeah, man. I think that was something that it's really hard to compete with Xbox on that front, but I thought maybe Sony would either announce and there still is time for this, but I felt like they would announce like a new big streaming service or something along those lines that push the backwards compatibility in their own way. But it was just, like I said, I'm seeing a lot of like turtling on the backwards compatibility front, going from top 100 to, we have a lot we believe they will run. If it requires developer input, that's the we believe right there then, right? It's like, well, we think they'll run if the developer cares enough to get it running. And you'll just sort of see, I think it'll become a system identity thing. Do you want backwards compatibility? Does your whole library matter? Go to Xbox. That's kind of what I think it might turn into, right? Same thing with what we say nowadays. Do you want good exclusives? Here's a laundry list of excellent games. Go to PlayStation. Yeah, that kind of thing. Or do you want Game Pass, $10 a month? You have a huge library of games, a lot of them great, but you might have already played them already. So there's that. Now, yeah, the PlayStation 5 tech demo, whatever you want to call it, didn't do Sony well. There was a lot of mixed marketing, a lot of mixed messages. It seems like their wait and see approach against Microsoft, which I've said for a while, Sony just should have done their own thing, but they've been trying to wait to respond to whatever Xbox is doing, has just been foolish, because now you're in a game of catch up, and you're just constantly, now that Microsoft had been rolling since December, had people's interest, they were drip feeding news, and then you come out and you sort of, I don't want to say drop the ball, I think it's a little extreme. There's plenty of time and things that they can absolutely do that people would care about and get people in their favor. But when you start to just try to respond constantly, I feel like that just sets you up for failure, because you can either respond and dunk and be like, oh shit, Sony did it. But we sort of saw Microsoft do that after the fact when Sony did their tech thing here. And Microsoft immediately after, Larry Herb tweeted out, in case you missed it, here's all the Xbox details between specs and stuff, saying like, hey, you didn't have to sit down for an hour. You could have spent 5 minutes reading an article for the same information. But what essentially happens is when you're playing this game of catch up, you either have to land the dunk or you kind of look foolish like this, and you look like your marketing is woefully behind.
Yeah, I think also, Lau, out. Sorry, I had to kick my dog out. I think I think not only that, but so whether you believe this or not, the rumor that was going around was that Sony was not happy with the basically CPU GPU power difference between the two numerically, as in they knew people would focus on that. Because there is a fairly sizable difference in power. But one thing that is actually noticeable, and it was certainly noticeable there was a lot of hedging where it was like, oh, we want to move and the discussion of power to something that no one's ever done before. Now, this has been done before, though. Almost every single company, when they have an issue with tech, always tries to move the discussion to something else. This is very normal. So if you look at the CUs in particular, one of the biggest issues between these two systems is ray tracing. So CUs, the computational units, are directly in charge of ray tracing, one of the biggest things that is occurring like on current game engines. There is a massive difference between the two in power. What that means is you will get games where if Microsoft wants to, let's say, look at this game, what'll happen is you'll get a game where there is global illumination, let's say, on one system, Sony's, and then ray tracing on Microsoft's, because the ray tracing maybe is just not, there's just not enough power there on the PS4. Those kind of things are what's really weird. Additionally, the variable CPU GPU, that's quite normal. Sony always likes to pretend that what they've made is something brand new and that no one in the universe has done it before. But Microsoft does it too. But they're both liars. And what they do is they change a little bit and say this is magically ours. For example, Sony tried to pretend that theirs was the only one with a audio 3D hardware with 3D like chip. Microsoft, not only do we already know what they have, but we already have the Hellblade 2 people saying that it's the most powerful like custom audio chip that's going to be in either console. But everybody focused on the Sony one because they pretended during that discussion that no one else had it. So, and that's sort of normal. Like, that's why I always tell people you can't really, because I was dissing on Microsoft, man. Like some of the, they're like, we've got this and you're all, really? Because that's pretty normal for AMD and an APU. That's not abnormal. One cool thing Sony's got is they've got this new compression and they talk about it. However, and I was pretty positive towards the compression, which would give you big throughput between the hard drive and the RAM. I was like, man, that's pretty cool. However, then the guy, one of the major guys who's like written compression schemes in the world, was like, the hardware compression they put in is good, but what was said isn't actually exactly true. And then he broke down that like custom compressors that Microsoft have written are easily as good, and it has its own chip in there that also, and it's not probably as powerful as the PS4's one, but it still is in there to handle some of this stuff. So, dude, it's a bunch of smoke and mirrors from both. I think probably less from Microsoft because they knew their numbers were higher everywhere where people would compare them. But they both like their smoke and mirrors, and they both like to pretend. And it's like, so what I did was I reached out to 4 developers. I reached out to about 14. Only 4 responded. But I was like, is there anything magic here that like we're not getting? And there was a flat across the board no. What they did state was that for first-party titles for Sony, there are particular things that they could do to make a game look unique because of the double speed NVMe. But then most of the developers at the same time said, first of all, the difference in speed between these two and the old ones is probably already going to look genre defining, because the speed difference even in the Xbox is massive between the Xbox and the Xbox X. So the Series X has its own NVMe too. So I don't know, dude. Like it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I don't think he should have gone out there. I think what they should have done is been like, we've tuned this thing like a turbo, right? And it's like, Xbox has got a V8, we've got a V6 turbo. Do something that people can understand and be all, they're both powerful, and sort of leave it at that. But instead, they dived into shit, and a lot of it felt like sort of like, look over here, while they were trying to do something on the side. It was sort of disingenuous. That's the way I felt. The fake audience, the discomfort of the entire announcement, like it all felt really almost like what you said, where they were responding late. It all feels very protective.
Right.
So we'll see, though.
I was interested in some of the developer discourse I saw on Twitter. One that caught a lot of headlines was, I don't know if it's Andrea or Andrea. I'm going to say Andrea. Andrea Pacino, who's a founder and CTO at Ready at Dawn Studios, one of Sony's first-party studios, said, "Dollar bet within a year from its launch, gamers will fully appreciate that the PlayStation 5 is one of the most revolutionary, inspired home consoles ever designed, and will feel silly for having spent energy arguing about teraflops and other similarly misunderstood specs."
Yeah.
With a kissy face. I mean, that's what kind of happens is once we start getting into the lifespan of the consoles, right? It's about the games. That's what happens. It's about the games. Even with Microsoft, who kind of was behind on power for a majority of this generation until I think the One X, it was still about the games. What games is Microsoft bringing to the table that Sony can't? So I would agree that we are going to start talking about games down the line, but I think you also have to look at the likes of Nintendo, who's kind of found a way around a power problem with a gimmick. We'll see how long that lasts into this generation. But yeah, it's interesting. I also saw developers saying specifically that some of the changes with the PlayStation 5 would allow you to kind of back up your project, essentially, like reverse course. Say something's not working, that you could flip it around without getting bottlenecked, essentially, which I think is that's
good. A lie though.
That's the lie you were talking about.
Yeah, dude. So can the Xbox. See, so here's the problem. If you have two people who are insanely fast, 10 times faster than any other sprinter, but your entire race has always been developed around normal sprinter speeds, both of those people who are running away in front of you are going to look blindingly fast. What Sony is trying to do is say, blindingly fast doesn't matter. We are more faster. And that's going to massively change everything. Additionally, just so you know, the Ready at Dawn guy was also the guy that said the PS3 cell processors would revolutionize PS3 development. Did it? No. So
did not.
It did not. And
maybe in a bad way. Maybe.
And I'm not saying that they're wrong. I certainly do think he's lying, definitely lying when he says the often misunderstood computational ways in which we book. No one is misunderstanding. No one in the world is misunderstanding like teraflops or throughput or speeds. Mm-hmm. Those CPU and GPU speeds, no one in the world is misunderstanding those. There are entire tech channels based around them. So that is purely disingenuous. That's disingenuous. And it's as disingenuous as anybody at Microsoft who ever pretended the eSRAM would add some fucking magic to the Xbox original. And they did, by the way. They did. And they even tried to say DirectX, by the way, on the Xbox. They tried to say DirectX alone would make up the difference between the PS4 power and the Xbox. So what people need to do is look at what happens in a while. I love the idea that we'll go back and look and go, this is revolutionary. However, every single thing that was explained to the people I asked okay, so the difference between revolutionary and not is not the same difference as useful and different, or useful and not. Is it revolutionary? Yes, because they've focused on super fast bandwidth even faster than Microsoft, but it's also pretending Microsoft isn't also focused on super fast memory. They're pretending that Microsoft is still using a 54 RPM hard drive in all of their discussions. And they're
essentially ignoring your competitors.
Acknowledging
their steps forward.
Right. And so what you're going to get is the same thing we've always got with Sony. Admittedly, I have a sore spot with Sony lying. I always have. I feel that they've been disingenuous about their hardware almost every time. Maybe not the PS4, but certainly PS2 and PS3, telling people that they couldn't sell them to the Middle East because they couldn't allow Saddam to have them because they're so powerful they could launch nuclear missiles. Like their shit was fucking just ripping off of them. Microsoft does the same thing. So to me, what we probably will see is, like you said, the games, and they both have something to offer, exclusives versus value. The big question to me is something I brought up in your Discord. Timing of exclusives is not in Sony's favor. There's a reason why. Sony wants you to move forward to the PS5. Microsoft is saying you don't need to. Their games are based on either the Xbox as it is now or getting a Series X. And they have exclusives that started a full year prior to Sony. So that is actually a very big question mark on the timing of those exclusives. Will Sony have Spider-Man 2 ready this fall? No. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's actually very interesting to me. Is like when, and I'm not saying Microsoft's exclusives will be good. I'm saying their timing, like Ori, for example. There's one, but like when is the timing for these exclusives? Because 8 great ones in 3 years, let's say, versus 2 good ones next year. I can tell you which. I don't know if I'll be alive in 3 years, so I'm not going to wait.
Gotcha.
So there's some. It's going to be. I mean, I love it because it's like
Wild West.
It's Wild West, yeah. And so I'm sure people think like I own a PS4. I review most of the games on PS4, but I will call them out when I find bullshit. And that, I mean, even the devs I talked to were like, yeah, it's awesome, but it's pretending that Microsoft isn't doing awesome as well. Like
I guess that's just the natural. I'm not excusing it, but I guess that's just naturally what these competitors do.
No, I think you're right. I think, isn't it what YouTubers do sometimes?
Just pretend that someone else didn't say the same shit they're saying?
Or something. Like, no, I think you're right. It's almost like rap. Like, you just do your thing.
Yeah, like, it's, I mean, in the same of, yeah, okay, so I get what you're saying. Yeah, when I sit down to record a video, I try not to watch or absorb as much people's content as possible on a topic unless I feel I need to be properly informed. Like, when I try to talk tech, I'm not gonna lie to my audience and be like, yep, here we are, here's the GPU, the CPU, I know what this is. You want to source your knowledge, but you want to go in as raw as possible so that people are getting you, like what you think, and expanding on your thoughts, and you got to embrace that. So yeah, I'm sure they have that same attitude and approach of, we don't care what they're doing. I mean, Microsoft has an interesting angle because they've said, we don't care what Sony and Nintendo are doing, more so Sony, because we care about what Google and Amazon are doing. And that's like a more understandable ignoring, because they do have a lot of brand recognition and exposure, and more than anything, at least with Google, while Stadia is not a threat, they have reach. And we're seeing them get like exclusive streaming time with the likes of Baldur's Gate 3, which, that's not going to pull anyone through the door, let's be honest. As much as I love Larian and what games they make, I don't think that's going to bolster the Stadia by any means. But yeah, I think Microsoft at least explained properly why they're like, we're going to do our thing and not really worry about PlayStation because they're not our primary target, where PlayStation seems stuck back in the fucking like mid 2000s.
Yeah.
Or even 2014, where they were doing like the used game promo.
Yeah.
It's like, here we go.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think, I just think they probably got surprised, or they just read the landscape and was like, people are going to care about numbers, so let's pretend numbers don't matter on this, but let's then say numbers matter over here on this other thing. And I also do believe that as a tech head, I get excited about weird tech. I love the 360 because it had the RAM buffer on the chip, which made it sort of do stuff that we were like, weird. The Cell had some weird stuff. It was like, that's sort of cool. So to me, that's what happens here, where it's like we're doing something different with the hardware, or with the speed of hard drives and stuff, which they absolutely are. But it's also, it's ignoring everybody else. It's almost like a race car game ignoring another race car game. And you're just like, but you can ignore it, but other people aren't going to. Additionally, Microsoft, I told you this a couple months ago, whenever they said that, I called them out. I do believe Microsoft was being sort of dumb when they said, we don't consider Sony a competitor. And I think I told you, I was like, they do, but only in gaming, but they're also trying to stream, which is why they said Google. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah. Yes.
So to me,
I was just talking about reach.
Right. I do feel that they both can be very disingenuous at times and like pretend things, and it confuses the consumer. Because I hate this kind. I love the tech, but I hate the fanboy shit. Like, oh god. And they're connected. Because I'm sure people are going to get mad even here, where I'm saying that like they're both doing something fast. People are like, yes, but, and you're just like, dude, you just don't understand. We've all lived through this how many thousands of fucking times?
I know. That's why I'm not making an excuse for my own lack of knowledge, by the way, before anyone comes at me, but it's why I don't pay close attention to the tech shit, because I feel like you're splitting hairs at a certain point in time.
Yep, for sure.
Is it worth knowing? But it's for sure. But it's one of those things where I feel like the games are just, it's an entertainment product. So for me, I'm more interested in talking about like what games and services as a consumer you're bringing to the table that benefit me or hurt me, and focusing the conversation there. I don't think it justifies fanboyism, but at least you can talk about bettering the industry as a whole. Like, there's no shadow of a doubt that PlayStation has taken notice to how popular Game Pass is and not thought to themselves, well, we want our own essentially Netflix for games. How would we do that? Or how do we build off of PS Now and make it into something like that? You know, that's the probably their vision right now as well. It's probably in their program somewhere, and it's hard to compete with, but you know, that's the stuff that I think is more important leading into a generation.
Well, it is.
Which is why it's just so rare for me to dip my toes into talk way before all of that.
Well, dude, it's also let's say the Xbox is 100 million thousand teraflops. Let's say that it could compute reality as we stand. It still doesn't have Rabbids on it, and
that is true.
That is what, in the end, so when I bring up the exclusives things, I'm like, Sony's got more, but that doesn't mean you'll like them, because it depends on what exclusives you like. I know people who like Halo and Forza and don't want anything to do with Spider-Man, even though it's one of my favorite games. So the games are more important. But I think the dick measuring contest.
That's a perfect way of putting
it. It does start. It inherently starts with fans for sure, but it is not helped by these companies and the way they drop the one-liners. Like, just even Cerny, even Phil Spencer. Even Phil Spencer with his nice guy attitude. He's like, we want to, congratulate Sony. I get it, right? He does, but he also wants to win. Cerny saying, like, we don't want to talk about something we've talked about for 25 years that everybody's measured and perfectly calculated. We're going to pretend that doesn't exist anymore. And you're like, yeah, okay, we get it. Like, I just get tired of it. They make it worse, and we do a good enough job fucking it up anyway. So, like, Rabbids, yeah, it's a good example. It's like, boom, doesn't matter what your fucking system is, it doesn't got Rabbids on it, so fuck off. For some people, that's what will matter.
Very good point.
And I can't wait to see the games. That's why I'm more interested about how these timing is going to happen with the coronavirus. So how is the timing going to play out with the exclusives? And,
might set things back.
Right. And then, like, let's say somebody does want to use the very particular power of a PS5. How long will that take? Because we know not every developer will make a game just for that, because that would make no sense. So, and Digital Foundry even said that. Like, John Linneman was like, yeah, I love it, man. This is super fast, even faster than the Xbox One's NVMe. And then later somebody said, well, dude, is that going to result in anything other than a couple first party having like slightly special stuff? And he's like, well, no. And
exactly.
But we always hear the first couple reactions. But what really matters is, come fall, what's available. And I don't know what will be. I honestly don't, Matty. I'm really starting to question what's going to be available this fall.
Yeah, I've said since it was the last solo show I did, you weren't here, I said as the virus started to pick up and Sony was silent at this time, mind you, I said I would not be remotely surprised if this whole thing got pushed back to like March of next year. I would not be shocked. I think Xbox might stay the course.
Yeah, because they announced their date too.
Yeah, they did, and then they took it back. But I think
did they?
Yeah, the November one you're talking about, right?
Thanksgiving, the big alert?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they rolled that back and said we're still looking at holidays. I imagine that's saved for a later time when they can specify.
Good to know. I did not know that.
Yeah, and so I think when you combine that with what you told me, which was that they had found other factories that maybe could stay afloat and continue to produce the console, I think they may still make it out in 2020. I think they've been on it for long enough. Where PlayStation and its issue with parts and pricing and seemingly being late, at least conversation-wise, I do wonder if they're starting late because they plan on releasing later. Because that's the thing. I don't understand why these companies feel the need to release in the same period of time. Like, if one of these consoles dropped in March and one dropped in November in the holiday period, we've seen the success of the Switch in March and where it started from, mostly because of the game that it was accompanied with on launch, which was Breath of the Wild, don't get me wrong. But it's just a thought that they don't need to launch on top of each other, especially when Microsoft, let's say they do get it out in 2020. They're not really encouraging you to make the leap unless you want to. They're like, yeah, the games that you're going to get here, you can get on your Xbox One.
Yeah,
so for Sony, it's like, why don't they think about just taking their time and doing it later if it serves them safety-wise, production-wise, and how they want to do their plan. Like we just talked about doing their own thing. I wouldn't be shocked because that was my initial prediction that Sony would be a little bit later.
I think also one of the discussions we had on our podcast was, so people were like, oh, because it's not as powerful CPU and GPU wise, the PlayStation 5 will be less expensive. One thing you can't do though is pretend, and this is Sony saying this, that a bunch of custom work doesn't cost you money. So there is a very clear chance that what we will see is a closer price point between these two as well. And faster, the faster internal storage is going to cost more, all those things. So to me, it's also price. And I think that if these companies are getting into, let's say, August, maybe not August, maybe like June, July, they look at the world events. I agree that I think it would be totally fine if one of these guys, including Microsoft, just because all games will work, right, on anything, and they have the X, which is already hugely powerful. I could see them saying, like, why rush it out, or just do a lean release and just be like, not the big worldwide release, right, the big boom. Mm-hmm. Instead, just be like, hey man, X series is here. We told you the X was awesome, and you don't need to get something else. Drop the price of the X to a price point that's fairly stable. I think the big issue, Matty, is that economy-wise, most investors are stating that we're going into a recession due to the issues.
Yes.
Plus, there was also worry prior to this even that we were going into a recession. I don't see how this will make it better. I do wonder if both these companies have to look and just be like, it's a hard buy. Right now, it's not as big of an issue. You and I are figuring out our shit, but we're still working normally and, whatever. But last night, I told this story to the guys. Last night, I almost bought something, and I looked at it, and my brain went, wait, I'm okay now. But if this continues for 3 months, that is a frivolous purchase, and I might need that $60. It wasn't expensive either. But I legitimately thought that, and that's because in what I am hearing is that we are looking at minimum 3 months of huge, issues. So I could see both companies also just saying 2021, like March, like wait through the holiday, cold part of the holiday, which is supposedly might affect all this, and see what happens, and be safe, like you said, with the worker, not, collapse a bunch of workers into a fucking place so they can get sick.
Yeah, I guess what I struggle to see is with everything around us closing down, how console production, I mean, granted it's happening in China, which, they just reported no cases today.
Yeah.
And so they seem to be getting better where the manufacturing was happening. So one scenario I can see is as they have risen out with now, we'll say 8 months and change to spare, and we're kind of going into the darker time, will we rise out with these things ready to go, or will China hit like another problem? It's that thing where while we're hunkered down here, will consoles be produced so that when we can actually come out and leave our houses, we can essentially buy the next console by that point?
Yeah, and
it's the only thought.
I also wonder, dude. So China, because this is what I want to study is virus and all this stuff. One of the things they're worried about is a surge, which is where you think the virus is gone, and and remember, no one has an immunity to the coronavirus, where they do with flus. So that's the one big difference here. So if you put people back out and even one person gets it, boom, you start it over. And the American policy and idea is possibly doing 3 months on, 1 month off. So 3 months closed down, 1 month running, 3 months closed down, 1 month running. And that is what I'm wondering about, is it because if China has another resurgence at some point, right, these companies are going to be like, fuck this. This isn't going to work.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. How long, how many do they have being made? How many can they get here? Amazon has already stated very clearly that they have stopped physical shipments of half of their shit. So how do you even get your equipment? That's another big thing. Now we're hearing that there's a possibility that a lot of the shipping companies are laying off 50% of their workers. So it's like, how do you do a console release if you can't go to a store and you can't buy it from the biggest store in the world?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, man. Like ignoring the tech, and I don't want to depress people, but I think people should be aware that regardless, it's going to be a weird. Because even if the hardware gets into our hands, we don't even know if the companies are making games. In fact, we know some companies are. I know of at least one big game being delayed, and I'm quite literally shocked it hasn't been announced yet. Like it's not Cyberpunk. I want to say that.
Yeah.
But so I don't know, man. It's interesting. We live in interesting times, dude. We live in a time that no one. I mean, like 200 years from now, people will be talking about this if we're still alive. Like it'll be in a history book somewhere where all nations in the world shut down, which is, unheard of.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy. You not to further into that discussion, but you wonder sometimes. At least I've had this thought where things happen in your life, and you wonder like, oh, will that be in a history book? And like now, what we're living through is definitely like a history book
for sure. Yeah.
Where it's like, oh shit, like kids are gonna learn about this, and
yeah,
it's crazy. They'll be like, how did that happen? Like, how did people survive like that? That type of stuff. It's going to be really interesting. And now when I'm a grandpa, I have a story to tell.
Well, no, dude, you're absolutely. See, so that's one of the things is like, honestly, not only a story to tell, but I personally believe not cool thing, not even a positive out of this, but something we will learn from this also is what not to do next time. And when something like this happens, or possibly get more money into healthcare and looking at attacking things prior to them being an issue, but also companies have notoriously had a foothold in China, despite China's consistent reliance in like spying, stealing technology. Because they're cheap, American companies, European companies have notoriously invested in manufacturing there, despite the fact that they could move them for a little bit more to nations nearby and have none of those issues. Microsoft's moved one fab, I know, out of China. So it's like that kind of stuff we're going to learn, which I think is cool because that also means maybe another nation that isn't doing so well gets, like a manufacturing fab, and helps them out. There's some cool stuff that's going to happen in business. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how quickly the world gets on its feet.
Oh, dude.
But for now, we shall wait and see.
I want to ask you something.
Sorry.
What do you think about the Xbox controller, right? We know all about it. There's really nothing. It's pretty what? But what do you think about the
same, right?
Yeah, what do you think the reason was that we didn't get hardware view on the PS5 and we didn't get any controller discussion?
That's a really good question. I think it's because PlayStation is probably figuring out their gimmick. I feel like they like to have some type of gimmick with every controller. Like everyone talks about Nintendo, even I do. But when you really look at PlayStation's controller, it's always something new. Like, right, we have the touchpad, we had 6-axis.
Gyroscope. Yeah, right.
Right, and now we're talking about maybe there being some sense of like a sweat detector on your controller.
Yeah.
It's hilarious, but it's like, I feel like they're still figuring out what the fuck they want to do with this thing. Like, I imagine if they're smart, the first good. I say this as like a lover of the PlayStation 2, ladies and gentlemen, but I even like the PS3 a lot. But none of those controllers have ever felt good until the PS4. The PS4 was the first controller I feel they legitimately got right. And even then, I responded to your tweet, actually. I think the Xbox One controller is like the best controller ever.
I saw that.
It literally, for my hands, it fits it perfectly. Triggers feel good. Bumpers feel great. Don't have to like press really hard like you did with the 360. Could the D-pad be better? Probably the only complaint I have about it. But otherwise, I love how the button presses feel. I love the Xbox controller. So if I'm PlayStation, I would model my controller a little more vertically. But in answer to your question, I feel like they're still figuring it out, or it was just a conscious decision. I said this in my video. A lot of people were really upset, and I understand why they were upset because we didn't see things we wanted to see. But Sony's verbiage was very clearly
they were clear.
Tech talk.
Yeah,
they were like tech deep dive. Mm-hmm. Mark Cerny's going to get into the architecture of the PlayStation 5. I think that should have indicated a console be shown. That was confusing. But in the terms of pricing and when it's releasing and a game trailer maybe, I think that could have helped ease the blow of Mark Cerny's brilliance on display, we'll say. If he described something and then showed it in a PlayStation 5 game or a game running on PS5, that would have helped, I think, people like myself and others who maybe don't get it as much properly understand it. But yeah, they're on their own schedule, man. And maybe they're in that E3 mindset. Nothing big can happen now until the middle of the summer.
Yeah. What surprised me is they also didn't mention
probably
a number of AMD stuff that Microsoft mentioned. They didn't mention FreeSync. They didn't mention any of the low latency stuff Microsoft mentioned. They didn't mention any of the APU stuff that's on a normal on the normal APU that AMD's bought. And some people have been like, that means it's not a full step up in the new APU. It's actually like a 1.5, which is why it doesn't have support. I don't know that, and I don't probably believe that. But I found it weird that he jumped into graphics and all this kind of stuff, but never once said anything about what are considered two of the biggest technical innovations in gaming in the last 10 years, which is VSync.
Right.
VSync is massive. FreeSync, G-Sync, that is massive. And if anybody out there has played it, usually they'll say the same. They'll be like, dude, of all the things in the world, that is the biggest deal, which I found interesting because he covered everything else around it. So, yeah, I don't know. A lot of stuff that was weird, I guess. Whatever.
Yeah.
No rabbits. It's all that matters. Fuck it.
Yeah, right.
That'll be my new
Mario XCOM. Hey, at least that's rumored to be in development. A sequel to that'll be great,
dude.
That you want to talk about a game that'll save the world?
Yeah, for sure.
Another Mario and Rabbids.
Fucking A, I'll be all over that.
Yeah. All right, let's rip through these patron questions. Like we like to do every single episode, we encourage you to just sound off. What do you want to know from us? What do you want to talk about? We have about 8 questions today to tear through, so let's start off with Brown Ninja 97, who always seems to be the first, I feel. Hi, Maddie and Karak. How many gigabytes do you think the average game will take up in next gen? We saw with the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One with their 500 gigabyte drives that you could fill that with 3 or 4 games, and I'm just adding this in personally. We're also seeing now Final Fantasy VII Remake is a little bit over 100 gigabytes, and we've seen that with Call of Duty in the past too. So how many, I mean, obviously you could ballpark any number, but what do you think, I guess, the small range would be for a game on the next-gen consoles and a large game, a pretty game, we'll say, with lots of assets and audio?
I would say Doom is at 37.8, Doom Eternal, but 100 will probably get very close to normal. And additionally, if we do see 3D audio from both these companies, much bigger due to the way audio is put on a disc.
That's what I always say to people. It's half the time it's the audio that really
ridiculous.
Because, ladies and gentlemen, just it's easy to think just voice work. It's like, no, it's every sound, footstep,
and they can't be compressed again.
Reload.
If they're compressed, if you've compressed the audio, you don't compress them again. You can use like compression for textures. But for
those sound like shit.
Right, but the audio, well, yeah, what was that game? Skyrim Shit Edition. Oh, no, what was the Xenoblade also? Holy shit. Xenoblade 2.
Oh, really?
Dude, its audio's trust me, you need to go online and look at this after this podcast. It will blow your mind. It makes Skyrim Special Edition
wasn't a huge fan of that
sound
game.
like an orchestra. But yeah, so you can't just randomly compress those again. So they'll be pretty big. Pretty big.
Yeah, I figured as much. I would say like a low range might be like an indie game will now be like 50 gigabytes.
Yeah.
Which used to be like 4. Brown Ninja also asked us, what would be better, Animal Crossing featuring in Doom or Doom featuring in Animal Crossing? I think the latter's more realistic, giving like a Doom guy armor set that you can wear on your island. That should be kind of cool.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind that crossover because Bethesda seemed to really like that. We don't know how Nintendo feels about it. Heretical Shark asks us, how do you guys prevent cabin fever from setting in? There's a lot of ways. I have worked indoors I shouldn't say indoors, in my own 4 walls in my house for 4 years now, but technically my work's been in home my whole life. So I'm kind of used to this. What I always recommend to people is setting up like deadlines for your day, like from even like eating food. Okay, by 11, I want to have breakfast in my stomach and starting my day. By 2, I want to be having lunch and getting ready to exercise afterwards. By 6, I want to be done with everything work related. So 7 and onwards, or I'm going to shower after that, and 7 and onwards, I just have the night to do leisure things. So things to prevent cabin fever, going on a walk for exercise is like number 1 on my list. Just you'd think it does nothing, but like getting out, turning on a podcast, not even ours. You can listen to whatever you want, and just kind of just breathing fresh air, not breathing the same recycled air in your house. Breathing fresh air will do you wonders for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously, games, but I know Heretical Shark said that he doesn't have the best internet.
He doesn't.
So
it's terrible.
So yeah, try. And I always like to relate to exercising because it's one of the things I think of that when we always have said in the past, I wish I had more time and I would be dedicated, that now we have all the time in the world.
Yeah.
So I would say take a step back and look at everything you've ever put off. Writing, art, talents that you thought you could hone but didn't have the time to, things that felt like pipe dreams but you just didn't have time. What are those? Analyze that and hone in on that. You know, like for me, one of my biggest things, my life is relatively unchanged in the terms of work. I have to work Monday through Friday. I spend most of my days working and producing things. So I guess for me, I don't have that extra leisure time, except I'm just home a lot more at night now. Once my work is done, so I'm playing a lot more games and I've been enjoying that. So for me, it's a little different. But yeah, man, it's really up to you to look at that type of stuff. For me, it would have been like making a game in RPG Maker. I love RPG Maker. If I had time, legitimate, like work canceled, free time, that would be the first thing I do. I would love to go on RPG Maker and just, even if it sucked, just make something fun.
Yeah, something crazy happened to me. I drove to, what do you call it? To San Francisco. And I've told you I don't get burnout. It doesn't really affect me. However, I do admit something happened that I cannot quite explain when I came, like when I was gone for a while. And I would, it's probably what everybody else feels, is like I'm out doing something. And it wasn't being met for some reason by going and working out at my own gym or walking in my backyard. I had to go somewhere else. And it was pretty cool. It was, I don't even really know how to describe it, but it was obviously there was some kind of cabin fever going on. It obviously wasn't affecting me hugely, but yeah, there was a lot more energy. I noticed I was even texting, tweeting more. I just noticed there was a little bit more communication when I did that. So yeah, get outside, go do. He lives out in the outdoors, man. Go for a walk. Do what you can.
Yeah, if you have access to a vehicle and you're able to, in wherever you live, go for a ride.
Drive. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I love driving.
New stimulating sights will help you quite a bit. I'm not a therapeutic driver type of dude. I think driving's such a fucking pain in the ass.
Well, yeah, where you are, lazy, though,
but
right?
I just
yeah.
But it's just I just like to walk places. Yeah, it's way easier. All right, Big Bad Wolf Hish. I feel like I see a lot of botched launches of RPG live service games. No matter what the games bring, they always seem to fail to hit their stride. It always makes me curious to what a great RPG live service game would do for the industry. I was wondering what you and Karak might do to mitigate the issues of RPG live service games like Destiny, Anthem, Fallout 76, etc. I think with a live service game, there will always and forever be a degree of finding a footing of what your audience likes.
Yeah.
That does not mean, because here's the thing, the Division 2 came out, and the reason people praised it at launch, I think, is because it worked right away. It was a good gameplay loop, and
you could play it.
Exactly, you could play it. That's very different from these games, which all of them had trouble finding what their fans like. It seems like Destiny 2, from what I've seen, it doesn't seem to be in the negative news cycle as much.
No, it's much better, yeah.
Yeah, and I think because of the free-to-play model, I just think now they're sort of hitting where they wanted to be. They focused in on lore and story a little bit more. So I think Destiny is one of those games that had to take its time to find its footing. Fallout 76, we'll see with Wastelanders. It's in a couple of weeks now. But that is a game that had to find its footing. And maybe it will with this expansion. But it was pretty obvious, put fucking human NPCs in the game, I know. But they wanted to try something different. We all knew it wasn't going to work except Bethesda. It didn't work. And now they are finding their footing, maybe. So we'll see with that one. I think there is a degree of feeling out. I don't think it needs to take a humongous failure or a colossal PR mess for these companies to wake up. I don't think that should be necessary. I think you can do a lot of what Ubisoft did with The Division 2, which is have the game working so that you can focus on the feedback for the gameplay and get to that as soon as possible. The issue with The Division 2 was it took too long to get to that.
Yep.
So it's always something. That's just at least my perspective on it. Do you have one?
No, that's pretty much, yeah, it's the same.
All right. Ben Jam asks us, what's the most you've been disappointed from waking up from a dream and realizing none of it was real? Well, I had this one where I married Karak.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Man, that's a sad one right there, baby. That's awesome.
I actually had a dream last night. I tweeted about it. I said that, and this isn't like an answer to your question, Ben Jam. I woke up, though, and I realized I had a dream that Bethesda had bought the rights to the Dragon Age franchise. And I woke up in a panic because I was not able to make a video immediately on such a pressing big topic. Like one of my favorite franchises, at least I shouldn't say franchises. Origins is one of my favorite games of all time though. And then Bethesda is like one of those RPG developers that I used to love. And it's like, wow, how's this going to turn out? I was like really upset that I couldn't get in on the discussion right away. And then like a lot of people beat me to it.
I used to have like power fantasy dreams when I was a kid. You know, like you're a magic user, you know, or what, you know, like you can fly, that kind of stuff. I would say I'm sure my answer would be, you know, one of those. I can tell you a funny story that's very short. My best friend had a dream. He was super depressed for a couple days. I could not figure out why, and I finally got him to tell me he had a dream on a Monday night, and I think I've already told you, Matty, this, and the dream was he was dating the hottest girl in school. It was so realistic, he thought for 3 days he was dating her.
Oh my God.
He was devastated. JD, if you're out there, bro, fist bump. I hope you're over it. It's only been 20 years, but yeah, no lie. He was so devastated because he talked to her all the time and they were at school, right? He couldn't go to her house. So it wasn't like sexual.
Yeah.
He had a dream they were dating in a school like format, and he did not know for 3 days until he either figured it out or something, but he realized it was a dream and he was devastated.
It's funny you mentioned that. Have you ever had a dream where you've like not dated someone, but you've gotten close to someone or hung out with them? Like you had a dream that you're hanging out with them, and then you see them and you like realize, oh fuck, I do not know them at all.
Yep.
Like I felt like I knew them well, and then you see them and you're like, I've never talked to this person.
Yep. For sure.
Happened to me a ton in high school.
For sure.
Like, I'd just be hanging out with a group of kids that like I've seen a ton in my classroom, and you walk in the next day, like you kind of know them. And you realize, oh wait, that was a dream. I definitely do not know you guys as well. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, it's very surreal.
The most disappointing thing, I've woken up from a dream. I don't know. I'm not much of a dreamer in the first place. I very rarely have dreams. I always tell people I die for a little bit. It goes black. I wake up. That's all that happens.
Right.
So, all right, let's rip through some Mike Fury questions. He's got 4. Where does Ori and the Will of the Wisps rank for you on the best indie games of all time conversation? For me, it's top 5.
Is that an indie game? Is that what we're calling that?
I wouldn't call it that.
I wouldn't either, but I'll bite because I get where he's coming from. Top indie. I don't know if I would rate it. I don't know. It's a great game. I don't know if I can answer that, but I would say top 5 or 10. It is.
I would say one of my favorite indies.
Yeah, it is. Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry, I cut you off. Actually, here you go.
I was just going to say it is a great game. I know that much. I just don't do lists a lot, so my brain doesn't work very well that way.
Yeah, mine usually doesn't. It takes me like I can usually think of ones in range, but to pick like a definitive favorite's tough. I usually think of games like Rocket League before it blew up when it was just kind of a startup indie game. Like that game it still is fucking fun. I haven't played it in a while. But yeah, I don't know, because I can't realistically put the second Ori in there because they are an Xbox-owned studio. They do have a lot more resources and financial backing than any other indie could dream of.
Yeah. It's like Yakuza, or not Yakuza, but the other one, Shenmue. It's not indie, it's Sony.
Yeah, exactly. Number 2 from Mike Fury. Do you guys think that Neo 2 will get some love at the Game Awards if we have a Game Awards?
At the Game Awards? No.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it will either. I really think this is going to be an overlooked game when we look back.
Yeah.
Number 3 for Karak. Elix is at $15. Is it worth it?
Yes. Well, it's fucking game's not AAA. So by now, I hope you know what it is, which is that it's a janky B game. But yes, for me, absolutely, that is well worth it.
I just get a kick out of that. That's a testament to the kind of reviewer you are. You could have just said yes and moved on, but you're like, well, hold on.
Yeah, I got to put some caveats
what
in
kind
there.
of gamer you are. Yeah, I'm the same way in a manner of speaking. 4. Each of you name 5 games on your backlog that you will tackle in this off season. I don't know if I got 5.
I don't know if I got 5. Yeah.
All right, I got 3.
Okay, go for it.
And they're all JRPGs, actually. I'm doing one right now, Legends of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel. That's one that, like I said, my audience has fucking berated me about, so I'm finally doing that. Chrono Trigger and Geese 8, Lacrimosa of Dana. I got that one from PAX East, and I'm really excited to dive into that. So those are 3 that are on my backlog. I've never played Chrono Trigger before. I really, really want to. I'm sure it's probably not aged the best, but it looks way up my alley. So I'm very excited to get my hands on that.
For me, there's a game that Delrith, he streams with Angry Joe. He told me about. It's like a Diablo style game called like Exenema, and I'm definitely gonna check that out. I thought
you were going to talk about the other one that just released a couple weeks ago.
Wolfson.
Yes.
Nah, Wolfson's a fucking disaster. I played Wolfson for a while. I'll probably never return to that game. Hey, Ming, shut up. Sorry. Jesus, he's getting on my nerves. So
I heard him moaning.
Yeah, so
I was just like, is that his door?
No, it's fucking dogs. So those 2, and so that one, and then honestly, dude, I think I'm gonna get on the Xbox and take on 1 or 2 of the Yakuzas. If nice. I have open time, that's the issue. Like, we don't know what games are coming when, and if they still are. So, but right now, that would be my hope.
Yeah. All right, moving on to questions from Great Ape. Number 1 is from me. Matty, you mentioned planning to get back into streaming games a bit recently. Any update on that? So like I said, with my nights now being a lot open, one of the biggest issues, I'll be transparent here on why I stopped streaming, was number 1, I wasn't having a lot of fun. I felt like it was because, and actually one of my patrons opened me up to this. He said, you shouldn't make a schedule. He said, because then you feel like you have to. And it was true. I would not just live my life. I would have to go stream. And that didn't make it fun. Part of the fun with YouTube is I had an open day to just create something.
Sure.
And when I finished, and that's what I liked about it. So I need to take that approach to it. So I wasn't having fun with it. B, part of it was a viewership thing. I knew certain games, just like with YouTube, got me more views, but with streaming, if you're like, for example, I streamed Smite for 3 hours, and like I think we capped out at 30 viewers. I'm not trying to sound ungrateful, but like for someone of my size, that's pretty bad. And it was tough for me to find like what's a fun game that I can just chill and play versus one that my viewers would be really invested in and want to show up, because part of it's growing it, part of it's having fun. So there was finding that. 3, and this is really the most important one, I'd say, outside of the fun, is that with my new puppy who came in, and shortly after my grandmother's health, I genuinely mean this. I hate people who kind of pull this excuse out of their ass constantly. But with my puppy, I was always walking the dog, because he is my dog. And so I wanted to make sure I did take ownership of him, did take care of him, and did not neglect him. But I was always walking him. So it was like every hour. And still to this day, he's about an hour and a half now. But he has to go out constantly, because he, young guy. So, also on top of that, when you're stopping your work, what was like every half hour to an hour to go help him, it delays your YouTube schedule, and it starts to push everything back. Now my exercise gets pushed back. Now my dinner gets pushed back. Now it's 9 o'clock and I could stream, but man, I need some leisure time. So there was that. There was my grandmother's declining health too. I had to help take care of her for a while before we got her full-time caretaker. Sadly, she's in the hospital right now. She is doing a little bit better though, which is good. But there is that. Sometimes my mom was not home or my dad was not home because they had to be over at her house. So I would have to handle things here. And essentially streaming had to just be the thing that got axed. What's happening now, though, because of the quarantine, is everyone's home in my house now. So there are other people who can help take care of the dog. And I'm not saying this in a good way, but with my grandmother in the hospital, it's not like everyone's running around back and forth between her house. There will be a time that is the case. But since we're all stuck at home, it won't have as drastic of an impact. So I'm able to investigate streaming a little bit. I wanted to get it started before 76 Wastelanders came out, because I do plan on streaming that. I am thinking about streaming on YouTube too, after we had Cowboy on, and I've seen a couple of other creators I follow stream on YouTube, I'm kind of open to that. I like Twitch a lot, but I also like having all my stuff in one place. And I am a believer in, like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. But streaming's never been a huge part of my content strategy. And I would unlist all the streams anyway afterwards. So I feel like that's a good enough answer there for what's going on with the stream game. Karak, on the other hand, though, if you are looking for streams, has been you've been just killing it, man. You've been producing a ton of shit lately.
Yeah, we're gonna do a ton, but I agree with you. I think not to be rude to anybody here who's watching us, but YouTube, the YouTube viewership is a great deal more toxic during streams than Twitch. Even Cowboy within one day was already. I saw multiple Twitter posts from him. Just basically berating watchers who were bitching while he was streaming, which just doesn't happen on my Twitch channel.
That's true.
So there's that, but there is this bullshit. And I actually tweeted to Twitter, and I was like, in this weird time, I really wish you guys would look at just letting us all, stream to everybody, because this just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. It's like, this is making no sense at all. So I firmly believe that going to YouTube, can definitely work. It can work, and it depends, and it can be bad. But you're absolutely right. You go to Twitch, it doesn't matter how big you are. Dude, I pull bigger numbers than Angry Joe. And I'm like, that should not even occur. And the reason why is because it's so fickle with YouTubers moving there that it can be really difficult. So the idea of going to YouTube makes a lot of sense. It's just you have caveats for both. But I
exactly.
I get you. I know why you're thinking about it. It's a lot there to help out. It's like a trade-off,
right? Like, how bad is the toxicity going to be? I like to believe I have a good community. I have streamed on YouTube before, and it was when I was playing 76 before launch, and it was it could get a little toxic where I kind of was just like, all right, I'm going to be honest. Like, I was like, I don't want to fucking stream for you assholes. Like, some people were just being straight up dicks, and I don't get that on Twitch. And that's, what do you value more? I'm not a viewership first kind of guy, but there is a degree of wanting to see how many people get pulled in.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah.
So,
because you have a big, audience.
Probably I'll end up just sticking with Twitch, because I know my values of I do have people who are sub there. I don't want to undermine what I've done for them there, what I've built for them there. But also the community's good, and I think I value a more interactive, positive chat. And I'm sure with 76 streaming Wastelanders, it'll probably find an audience no matter what. So we'll see. Number 2 from Grade 851 is another exercise focused question. We have a lot of fit folks here in the Discord. In light of the virus, I've been going to be. Oh, I'm sorry, I misread that. In light of the virus, he used the wrong I. In light of the virus, I'm going to be avoiding the gym for a couple of months. Ordered a stationary kit for my bicycle and started jump roping.
Cool.
Man, I suck at jump roping and doesn't make my ankles ache in my mid-30s. Haven't done it since my late teens, really. How are you guys getting your exercise? Are you able to walk your dogs or have big enough backyards for them? Stay safe. Well, thank you for tuning in our lives. I like your idea of jump roping. I jump roped when I used to study for martial arts. I jump roped a decent amount, so I'd say it's something I'm very familiar with nowadays, but I hadn't for a while since beforehand, so I know what you mean by getting used to it. My dad, our basement was a mess for a while, but like I said, with all this time, we were able to actually completely overhaul our basement. And now we have a total gym set up there. So that is how I'm going to be getting a lot of my exercise now, with body weight sort of stuff, which is how I like to exercise as a relatively skinny guy.
But
for me, I love my runs.
Chuck Norris Total Gym?
It's like a...
with the slide
it's like
where
a
you sit on it and
gray.
you pull.
Yeah, you slide.
Yeah, I've got one. They're very good.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I haven't used it yet. It's been sitting there. My dad bought it, I think, from... was it Craigslist or eBay, something like that. He bought it and it was sitting there, and finally we've rearranged the room. There's plenty of room now, a lot of floor space, and so I'm going to be exercising with that. I do have a bench that I fold and put underneath my bed with some weights, but I brought that to my studio space because sometimes I would work out there while I was waiting for something to render, or I had like an hour to kill in between projects, something along those lines. So yeah, I've just been getting my exercise between that new Total Gym that I'm going to be using running. And I like the jump rope idea. If I can get my hands on a jump rope, I'm definitely going to start doing that because that's just rigorous. Old but good.
Yeah, jump rope's a bitch. We jump rope, and I still am not good at it. So.
What are you doing workout-wise?
We cleaned out the garage and have it all set up. I have a full gym bench press, 3 heavy water bags for boxing, and then I have a VersaClimber and all my airsoft stuff because I do a lot of runs in the backyard because I'm allowed. I can shoot back there, and so I do a lot of that. But I would say mostly martial arts. I do 2 hours in the morning, and then usually, if I can, I do an hour at night, depending on if I have the ability. I like to run. Running's difficult though, because I have to get ready for it. So the gym's here, so I just walk out my back door and go to the garage, and you're good to go. With running, I got to put on fucking running shoes and all this shit. And it sounds strange, but when I do martial arts, we don't wear shoes, and I like that. And the idea of like putting on sweats, everything, reflector if it's late at night, putting on fucking...
I get that.
Yeah, and so I've been really enjoying the gym. But we have a running machine too. I have a full-on running machine in the garage as well.
Have you ever seen the resistance-based running machines where it's
engine,
like you power it yourself? Yeah,
they're fantastic. And one of the things that's always bothered me is a running machine runs under you, not you powering it. So which is good for limbs and stuff like that, but not the greatest for like building up calf muscle and stuff. So yeah, I love those. If I had the money, I would definitely get one. They're a phenomenal idea, and only lately has the tech made it possible to make those. So I love the idea. I just don't have the money for one.
Yeah. Speaking of not having the money, I was talking to my girlfriend. I was like, yeah, I want to get a Peloton. I'm thinking these things are like $100-$200. And she's like, do you know how much they are? And she's like, I'm like, no, why? And she's like, they're like $3,000. Yeah. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I couldn't fucking believe it. I'm like, dude, this is a bike with a TV screen. Yep. I thought it would be expensive, but not nearly that expensive. That was ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
All right, last question comes from Grimblade, and then we'll wrap this up. What big manufacturers do you think the console manufacturer... What big features... Sorry, not big manufacturers. What big features do you think the console manufacturers are holding out for a big blowout event to reveal? I'm hoping for a system-level API for modding.
Oh, I think he said that before. That'd be crazy. I just don't see a company allowing it.
He's mentioned multiple times that he wants modding on consoles.
So something we think they're working on?
I would love that.
I think Microsoft's entire OS is going to be about making you a Twitch streamer or a Mixer streamer in some way. I really do believe that. I believe that they'll be like, sign into your gamer tag, we make you a page. I think it'll be all about spreading the social whatever of gaming. I think that's something we haven't seen from their OS.
Yeah.
They have a share button,
Yeah, I like that's one thing at PlayStation changed that I really liked. I didn't think I would be using the share a screenshot, sharing a video so quickly, but with how quickly you can get help from friends on walkthroughs and whatnot. Like I've had my friend hop into a couple of my share plays on PS4 when I was stuck on finding a collectible in Neo 2. And just having him hop in and be like, oh yeah, I went around that corner there to your left, and then okay, right there,
right,
and he just leaves, and I love that.
Yeah,
I think that type of inherent cooperative play, like he's there next to you, even though he's very far away. That's awesome. That's like my favorite part of the new gen. So I hope they kind of carry and expand that. Oh, I just got a big cock tease. I just opened up my email and it said Doom Eternal game key. I'm like, oh wow, here it is. I click on it. It says giveaway. Details inside and secret code entry. It's a fucking Origin PC mailing list email. Fucking shit. Oh well, not meant to be. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for episode 244 of the H.A.M Radio Podcast. Karak, it was a blast as always.
Yeah, stay safe, everybody out there.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure, man. Yeah, stay inside. Hopefully, this lengthier podcast kept you guys entertained. It's sort of been our at least my personal goal. To just, try to give you guys meatier, more enjoyable things in a time where you may be a little more bored. Even if it's only an hour, 10 minutes of your day. Just something to help you out.
A little something.
Yes. So we will talk with all of you soon. Thank you so much for your time. And here's to episode 245 of the H.A.M Radio Podcast next week. Peace out.
Peace out.